Zizhi Tongjian, Chronicles of Qin, 3. This video stays true to the original text, featuring readings in both classical and vernacular Chinese or English. This grand historical narrative begins in the year of Guasi, Jiang de Wanglu, and extends to the end of the year of Jiaowu, Ifang Dunzeng, spanning a total of 2 years. It was the second year of the reign of Emperor Qin Ershi, the year of Guasi, which corresponds to the momentous year 208 BC in history. In the winter of the 10th month, Ping, the overseer of Sichuan, led his troops to besiege the lord of Pei, Lu Ban, at Feng. Lu Ban marched out to engage them in battle and crush the enemy forces. He then ordered Yong Qi to guard Feng. In the 11th month, the lord of Pei led his army and proceeded to Shui. Huang, the magistrate of Sichuan, was defeated at Shui. He fled to Qi, where he was caught and killed by the lord of Pei's left marshal, named Da. Shu Zhuang marched out of the Hengou Pass and stationed his troops at Qian. After more than 2 months, the Qin general Zhang Hong caught up and defeated him. Shu Zhuang fled again to Mianqi. 10 days later, Zhang Hong attacked and dealt him a devastating defeat. Shu Wen committed suicide by slitting his throat, and consequently, his army ceased to fight. Wu Shu, Wu Guang, besieged Xinyang. Liu, serving as the magistrate of Sichuan, defended the city. Wu Shu was unable to capture it. The Chu generals, including Tianzong, conspired together, saying, Zhou Zheng's army has already been crushed. The Qin troops will be upon us at any moment. We have been besieging Xinyang but cannot take it. If the Qin army arrives, we will surely suffer a great defeat. It would be better to leave a few troops to maintain the siege and lead all our elite forces to confront the Qin army. Current pseudo-king, Wu Guang, is arrogant and lacks military insight. He is not someone with whom we can discuss critical matters. Staying with him will surely lead to our ruin. Consequently, they collectively forged the king's order to execute Wu Shu and presented his severed head to King Chen. King Chen sent an envoy to bestow the seal of the prime minister, Lin Yin, of Chu upon Tianzong and appointed him as the supreme general. Tianzong then ordered various generals, including Li Guai, to guard Xinyang, while he personally led the elite troops west to confront the Qin army at Aosang and engaged them in battle. Tianzong was killed in action, and his army was utterly crushed. Zhang Hong advanced his troops to attack Li Gui and others at the foot of Xinyang. He defeated them, and Li Gui and his fellow officers were killed. Deng Shu, a native of Yangqun, led his troops and stationed them at Jia. A subordinate general of Zhang Hong attacked and defeated him. Wu Feng, a native of Shi, led his troops and stationed them at Su. Zhang Hong attacked and defeated them as well. Both armies were dispersed and fled to Chun. King Chun ordered the execution of Deng Shu. Qin Ershi repeatedly rebuked Li Si, saying, You hold the high office of the Three Excellencies. How could you allow these rebels to reach such a state? Li Si was terrified. Valuing his rank and salary and finding no other way out, he flattered Ershi's desires and replied in a memorial, A truly wise sovereign must be one who is capable of practicing the art of supervision and accountability. Therefore, Master Shen said, to possess the world but not indulge one's whims is called using the world as a shackle. This occurs for no other reason than the inability to exercise supervision and accountability, causing the ruler to toil for the common people like Yao and Yu, hence it is called a shackle. If one cannot master the brilliant arts of Shen and Han or practice the way of supervision and accountability to find personal comfort in the world, but instead only labors his body and mind to sacrifice himself for the commoners, then he is merely a servant of the black-headed people and not a ruler of the world. What is there to value in that? Therefore, a wise ruler can exercise the art of supervision and accountability to maintain sole authority at the top, ensuring that power does not reside with ministers. He can then erase the paths of benevolence and righteousness, silence the debates of counselors, and boldly indulge his own desires without anyone daring to oppose him. In this way, officials and commoners alike will be too busy trying to rectify their own faults just to survive. How would they dare to plot any rebellion? Ershi was pleased. He then enforced supervision and accountability even more strictly. Those who taxed the people heavily were considered brilliant officials, and those who killed many were considered loyal ministers. Punished convicts filled half the roads, and dead bodies piled up daily in the marketplaces. The people of Qin grew increasingly terrified and longed for revolt. Li Yan of Shao had already pacified Chongshan and returned to report to the king of Shao. The king of Shao again dispatched Li Liang to seize Taiyuan. When he reached Shi, the Qin troops had blocked the Jingxing Pass, preventing him from advancing further. A Qin general forged a letter from Ayrshire to recruit Li Liang. Li Liang received the letter but did not believe it. He returned to Handong to request more troops. Before reaching the city, he encountered the king of Zhao's elder sister out drinking on the road, accompanied by over 100 riders. Seeing them from afar, Yang mistook her for the king and prostrated himself by the roadside to pay his respects. The king's sister was drunk and did not recognize the general. She merely sent a rider to acknowledge Li Liang. Li Liang had always held a high status. When he rose, he felt ashamed before his subordinates. One of his subordinates said, "The whole world is rebelling against Qin. Those with ability should be the first to establish themselves." Furthermore, the king of Shao was originally inferior to you in status. Now this woman dares not to alight from her carriage for you. Please let us pursue and kill her. Li Liang had already received the Qin letter and was already considering rebelling against Shao but had not yet decided. Driven by rage, he sent men to pursue and kill the king's sister, then led his troops to launch a surprise attack on Handong. Unaware of the impending danger, Handong fell, and ultimately the king of Shao and Shao Cao were killed. Since many Shao people served as eyes and ears for Long Er and Cheng Yu, the two of them alone managed to escape. Qin Jiao from Chun and Shu Jishe from Fuli, along with others, raised an army and besieged the magistrate of Daohai within the walls of Tian County. Upon hearing the news, King Chen dispatched Pan, titled Lord of Wuping, as general to supervise and command the rebel forces stationed below the city of Chen. Qin Jiao refused to accept the order and instead declared himself Grand Marshal. Despising the idea of being subordinate to the Lord of Wuping, he told his officers, "The Lord of Wuping is young and ignorant of military affairs. Do not listen to him." He then forged the king's command and executed the Lord of Wuping, thereby seizing full control of the troops. Emperor Ayrshire dispatched more officials, Chief Clerk Sima Xian and Dong Yi, to assist Zhang Han in striking down the bandits. After defeating Wu Feng, Zhang Han attacked the pillar of state of Chen, Lord Feng, and killed him. He then advanced to attack the army of Zhang He stationed to the west of Chen. King Cheng himself went out to supervise the battle. Zhang He was killed. In the 12th lunar month, King Cheng traveled to Ruyin. On his return journey to Ziyechengville, his carriage driver, Shuangjia, murdered King Chen and surrendered to the Qin. Initially, when Chen Shi had become king, all his old acquaintances went to seek refuge with him. His father-in-law also went there, but King Chen treated him only as an ordinary guest, greeting him with a long bow instead of a formal prostration. His father-in-law said in anger, "You rely on chaos to usurp a title and show arrogance toward your elders. You will not last long." He then left without saying goodbye. King Chen knelt to apologize, but the elder paid him no heed and continued on his way. The guests came and went with increasing unrestraint, gossiping about King Chen's past life. Someone cautioned King Chen, saying, "The guests are ignorant and only speak recklessly, which undermines your majesty." King Chen had them executed. All his old friends withdrew on their own accord, and as a result, there was no one left who felt close to King Chen. King Chen appointed Shu Feng as the rectifier and Hu Wu as the director of faults to oversee the conduct of his officials. When the generals returned from conquering territories, if their actions did not strictly adhere to his orders, he would immediately have them arrested and punished. He regarded harsh scrutiny as loyalty. For those he disliked, he did not hand them over to the law but punished them himself according to his whim. For this reason, the generals felt no loyalty toward him, and this was the fundamental cause of his eventual downfall. General L.V. Chen, a former valet of King Chen, organized the green-headed army in Xinyang. They attacked and captured Chen, executed Tongjian, and once again established Chen as the capital of Chu. They buried King Chen in Dan and gave him the posthumous title of King Yin. Initially, King Chen had ordered Song Luoshi to lead troops to pacify Nanyang and enter the Wu Pass. Song Lu had already occupied Nanyang, but upon hearing of King Chen's death and seeing Nanyang revert to Qing control, he surrendered with his army. However, Ershi had him executed by dismemberment to display as a warning. General Shoushi of Wei led troops to seize the lands of Feng and Pei, and he sent an envoy to recruit Yongqi. Yongqi had never wished to be subordinate to the Lord of Pei, so he immediately surrendered Feng to Wei. The Lord of Pei attacked the city but could not capture it. Zhang Er and Cheng Yu of Shao gathered their scattered troops, amassing tens of thousands, and attacked Liliang. Liang was defeated and fled to join Wang Han. A guest advised Zhang Er and Cheng Yu, saying, "You two are mere travelers here. If you wish to attach yourselves to Shao, it will be difficult to stand alone. If you establish a descendant of Shao and assist him with righteousness, you can achieve success." So they sought and found Shaoxia. In the spring, during the first lunar month, Zhang Er and Cheng Yu established Shaoxia as the king of Shao, with his seat in Xindu. Ninjun of Doyang and Qingjia, hearing of King Chen's defeat, established Jingju as the king of Chu. They led their troops to Fengyu, intending to strike the Qin army at Dingtao. They sent Gongsan Qing as an envoy to Qi, wishing to join forces and advance together. The king of Qi said, "King Cheng has been defeated, but his fate is unknown. How can Chu establish a new king without consultation?" Gongsan Qing replied, "Qi did not consult Chu when establishing its king, so why should Chu consult Qi? Furthermore, Chu was the first to rise in rebellion and should therefore lead the world." Tian then executed Gongsan Qing. The Qing commanders of the left and right again attacked Chen and captured it. General LV withdrew and regrouped his scattered troops, eventually meeting the bandit of Panyang, Qingbu. Together, they attacked the Qing commanders of the left and right, defeating them at Qingbo and once again establishing Chen as Chu. As for Qingbu, he was a native of Lu, with the surname Ying. Convicted of a crime, he was branded on the face and sentenced as a convict laborer to be sent to Mountli. Among the hundreds of thousands of convicts at Mountli, Bu associated with all the prominent leaders and heroes among them. He then led his companions to flee to the Yangtze River region and became a leader of a rebel band. The magistrate of Panyang, Wu Rui, greatly won the hearts of the people in the Yangtze and Lakes region and was known as the Lord of Pan. Bu went to see him, having already amassed several thousand followers. The Lord of Pan gave his daughter to him in marriage and ordered him to lead his troops to strike at the Qin. At that time, Jingju, who had proclaimed himself king of Chu, was stationed in Lu County, and the ambitious Lord of Pei, Lu Ban, decided to lead his troops to join and follow him. Zhang Liang, harboring great ambitions, had also gathered more than 100 spirited youths and was on his way to join Jingju. However, he encountered the Lord of Pei on the road. Finding a shared vision, he decided to place himself and his men under Lu Ban's command. The Lord of Pei held Zhang Liang in high regard and formally appointed him as the commander of the stables, in charge of horses and carriages. Zhang Liang repeatedly used the profound Grand Duke's art of war to explain strategies to the Lord of Pei. Lu Ban cherished these insights, praised them highly, and frequently implemented the brilliant plans suggested by Zhang. Curiously, when Zhang Liang explained these military principles to others, those generals seemed lost in a fog, completely unable to grasp the essence of his teachings. Zhang Liang sighed with heartfelt admiration. The Lord of Pei's wisdom is truly a gift endowed by heaven. Therefore, Zhang Liang willingly followed the Lord of Pei from that moment on and never departed. The Lord of Pei took Zhang Liang with him to have an audience with Jingju, the king of Chu, hoping to request a contingent of elite troops to recapture Feng, which was held by the traitor Yongqi. At that time, Sima Shire, a commander under the famous Qing general Zhang Han, was leading a massive army northward to pacify the resistance in the Chu region. he brutally slaughtered the city of Xiang and subsequently arrived with his troops at Deng County. Lord Ning of Douyang and the Lord of Pei joined forces to lead their troops westward, engaging in a fierce battle with the Qin army west of Shao County. Unfortunately, the battle went poorly, and they were forced to retreat to Lu County to reorganize their scattered forces. In the second month, Liu Bang led his army in a fierce assault on Deng County, successfully capturing the city in just 3 days. Liu Bang reorganized the surrendered and newly recruited soldiers in Deng, totaling 6,000 men. Combined with his original troops, his force surged to 9,000. In the third month, Liu Bang tirelessly led his troops to attack Xi and successfully brought the city under his control. Subsequently, Liu Bang turned his spearhead back to his hometown of Feng to reclaim it and wash away his shame, but regrettably, he was still unable to capture the city. Zhao Ping, a native of Guangling, was ordered by King Chen, Chengxin, to seize Guangling, but due to its strong defenses, he had not yet been able to capture it. Upon hearing that King Chen had been defeated and fled, and that Zhong Han's army was imminent, Zhao Ping decisively crossed the Yangtze River. Forging King Chen's order, he appointed Xiang Liang as the pillar of state of Chu and urgently told him, "Jiangdong is already pacified, lead your elite troops westward immediately to strike at Qin." Xiang Liang took advantage of the situation and led his 8,000 elite troops from Jiangdong across the Yangtze River, marching grandly toward the west. Having heard that Chen Ying had captured Dongyang, Xiang Liang immediately sent an envoy, wishing to reach an alliance agreement with him to march westward together. As for Chen Ying, he was formerly a minor scribe under the magistrate of Douyang. Living in the county seat, he had always been honest, trustworthy, cautious, and steady, earning him the reputation of a virtuous elder among his neighbors. A group of spirited youths from Douyang killed the Qin magistrate and quickly gathered an army of 20,000. They unanimously wished to establish the highly prestigious Chen Ying as their king. Chen Ying's mother, with an expression of deep concern, advised him, "Ever since I married into your family, I have never heard of any prominent or noble figures among your ancestors. Now that you have suddenly acquired such a prominent status, I fear it is not an auspicious sign. In my view, it would be better to place your troops under the command of a more powerful and established authority. If the grand enterprise succeeds, you can still be granted a noble title. Should it fail, it will be easier for you to hide or escape, as you will not be the primary target named by the world." Chen Ying, therefore, resolutely dared not declare himself king. He said to his officers, "The Xiang clan has been a family of generals for generations, holding great fame in Chu. Now, as we embark on this earth-shaking enterprise, it is absolutely impossible to proceed without a commander from such a prestigious lineage. As long as we rely on such a prestigious clan, the downfall of the Qin Empire will be inevitable and certain." His followers all heeded his advice, and so Chen Ying led his entire army of 20,000 to join Xiang Liang. The fierce General Yingbu had already crushed the Qin army and was advancing eastward. Upon hearing that Xiang Liang had crossed the Wai River and was moving west, Yingbu and General Pu joined Xiang Liang with their respective elite forces. The various forces under Xiang Liang's command reached a total of 60 to 70,000 men, and they grandly entered and stationed themselves at Shiapi. The nominal king of Chu, Jinju, and his powerful minister, Qinjia, were stationed to the east of Pengcheng, attempting to use the terrain to stubbornly block the westward advance of Xiang Liang's army. Xiang Liang spoke impassionedly to his officers. "King Chen, Chengxin, as the leader who first initiated the righteous uprising, has suffered setbacks in battle, yet his current whereabouts and fate remain unknown. Now Qinjia has openly betrayed King Chen and privately established Jinju as king. This is truly a treacherous and lawless act." Xiang Liang then advanced his army and fiercely attacked Qinjia's troops. Unable to withstand the assault, Qinjia's army was utterly defeated and fled in disarray. Xiang Liang pursued him all the way to Huling, where the desperate Qinjia was forced to turn back and launch a suicidal counterattack. After just 1 day of intense fighting, Qinjia was killed in the chaos, and his followers surrendered their weapons. The puppet king, Jinju, died in the region of Liang while fleeing. After successfully annexing Qinjia's troops, Xiang Liang enforced discipline and stationed his forces at Huling, preparing to lead this even larger Iron Army further westward. The main forces of the Qin general Zhang Han reached Li County, and Xiang Liang responded by dispatching his subordinate generals Shu Jishe and Lord Yufan to lead their units to engage the enemy. The fighting was exceptionally brutal. Lord Yufan was killed in action, and Shu Jishe's troops completely collapsed, while he himself fled back to Hulin alone. Xiang Liang was struck with thunderous rage. He led his army into Shui County and, on the grounds of military failure and fleeing to evade responsibility, sternly ordered the execution of the defeated general Shu Jishe. The Lord of Pei, Lu Bang, took only 100 or so riders to visit Xiang Liang. Xiang Liang generously allocated 5,000 elite infantrymen and 10 capable generals holding the rank of 5 grandees to Lu Bang. With the support of the elite troops and fierce generals from Xiang Liang, Lu Bang returned to his hometown. With unstoppable momentum, he assaulted Feng and finally captured the city in one grand effort. The opportunistic trader Yong Qi, seeing that the situation was lost, scrambled and fled to the state of Wei to seek asylum. Xiang Liang dispatched the incomparably brave Xiang Yu to attack Xiangchen, but the defenders fought desperately, and the city remained uncaptured for a long time. In a fury, once the city was taken, Xiang Yu ordered all the soldiers and civilians inside to be buried alive before returning to report to Xiang Liang. Upon receiving definite word that King Chen had been murdered, Xiang Liang immediately summoned all his subordinate generals to Shui County to collectively discuss the grand strategy for the future anti-Qin movement. The Lord of Pei, Lu Bang, was also invited to attend. An elder named Fan Zeng from Jiuqiu, who was 70 years old at the time, had been living in seclusion at home. He had a lifelong passion for studying extraordinary and unexpected strategies. He traveled specifically to advise Xiang Liang, saying, Chengxing's failure was an inevitable and natural outcome. When Qin annexed the 6 states, Chu was truly the most innocent and suffered the greatest injustice. Ever since King Wei of Chu was deceived into entering Qin and never returned, the common folk of Chu have deeply sympathized with him to this very day. Therefore, the Chu hermit Lord Nangong asserted, even if Chu were reduced to only 3 households, the one who destroys the Qin Empire will surely be from Chu. Now Chengsheng was the first to rise, yet he refused to establish a descendant of the Chu royalty and instead selfishly proclaimed himself king. Such momentum is destined not to last. Now that you have raised your army from Jiangdong, the reason generals from throughout Chu are swarming like bees to join you is that your family has served as generals for generations, and everyone expects you to re-establish a descendant of the Chu royalty. Xiang Liang found these words to be extremely sound, so he immediately sent men to search everywhere. They finally found Xiong Ai, the grandson of King Wei of Chu, in the vast countryside, where the royal descendant was humbly herding sheep for others, on a hillside. In the height of summer, in the 6th month of that year, Xiang Liang formally established Xiong Ai as King Wei of Chu to satisfy the deep aspirations of all the people throughout the Chu lands. Xiang Liang appointed Chen Yin as the pillar of state and granted him 5 counties as territory, ordering him to accompany King Wei as they established their capital at Shui. Xiang Liang, meanwhile, bestowed upon himself the title of Lord Wuxin, assuming full control over military and civil affairs. Zhang Liang took the opportunity to advise Xiang Liang, since you have already established the descendant of Chu among the princes of Han, Lord Henyang, Han Qing, is the most virtuous. You could establish him as the king of Han to expand your alliances and strengthen the anti-Qin forces. Xiang Liang sent Zhang Liang to find Han Qin, establishing him as the king of Han and appointing Zhang Liang as the minister of education. Zhang Liang then accompanied the king of Han, leading over 1,000 men westward to seize old Han territories. Though they captured several cities, the powerful Qin army consistently retook them. Consequently, they acted as mobile guerrilla forces in the Yinchuan region. After thoroughly crushing Chengxing's regime, the Qin general Zhang Han immediately marched his troops north and fiercely besieged King Jiu of Wei at Linji. The king of Wei sent his loyal general Shoushi to break through the siege and urgently request military reinforcements from the states of Qi and Chu. The king of Qi, Tiandan, and the Chu general Xiang Ta both unhesitatingly led their respective armies to follow Shoushi in a dash to Linji to rescue Wei. Zhang Han employed a brilliant strategy, ordering his soldiers to gag themselves with wooden bits at night to remain silent as they launched a surprise attack. he decisively defeated the Qi and Chu allied forces at the foot of Lingji, and tragically, the king of Qi, Tiandan, and the Wei general Shoushi were both killed in the chaos. To protect the innocent civilians of the city from being slaughtered, King Jiao of Wei took the initiative to propose surrender terms to the Qin army. Once all conditions were agreed upon, he resolutely immolated himself to preserve his integrity. The king's younger brother, Wei Bao, fortunately escaped the siege and sought refuge in Chu. King Wei of Chu generously granted Wei Bao several thousand soldiers, enabling him to lead his troops back to reclaim the lost territories of Wei. Tianrong of Qi gathered the remnants of his brother Tiandan's defeated troops and fled east to the city of Dongyi. The experienced Zhang Han pursued him relentlessly and quickly surrounded Dongyi. Upon hearing the news of King Tiandan's death, the people in Qi took it upon themselves to establish Tianjia, the younger brother of the former King Jian, as the new king, appointing Tianjia as chancellor and Tianjia's younger brother, Tianjian, as general, in order to resist intervention from other feudal lords. In the autumn, during the 7th month, there was a heavy and protracted downpour of rain that seemed to drench the entire world in a relentless, misty shroud. Lord Wuxin led his troops to attack Kangfu. Upon hearing that Tianrong was in dire straits, he redirected his army to crush Zhang Han's forces at the outskirts of Dongyi, forcing Zhang Han to flee in a westward direction. Tianrong gathered his troops and headed east, returning to the ancestral lands of the state of Qi. Lord Wuxin pursued the fleeing enemy forces alone, while ordering Xiang Yu and the Lord of Pei to launch a separate assault on Chunyang, which ended in a total massacre after its capture. The Chu army encamped to the east of Puyang, where they once again engaged Zhang Han in battle and decisively defeated him yet again. Zhang Han, however, managed to rally his forces once more, regrouping to defend Puyang by utilizing the surrounding waters as a natural defensive barrier. The Lord of Pei and Xiang Yu departed from Puyang and turned their attention to attacking Dingtao. In the 8th month, Tianrong attacked and expelled the king of Qi, Tianjia. Consequently, Tianjia fled to the state of Chu for refuge, while Tianjia fled to the state of Shao. Tianjian, who had previously gone to rescue Shao, remained there and dared not return to Qi upon hearing of the political upheaval. Tianrong then established Tianshi, the son of the late Tiandan, as the new king of Qi. Rong himself served as the chancellor, while Tianhong was appointed as the general, effectively pacifying all the territories of Qi. As Zhang Han's forces grew increasingly formidable, Xiang Liang repeatedly sent envoys to Qi and Shao, urging them to dispatch troops for a joint offensive against Zhang Han. Tianrong responded, "I will only deploy my troops if Chu executes Tianjia and Shao executes Tianjia and Tianjian." Both Chu and Shao refused to grant his request. Tianrong was infuriated and, in the end, stubbornly refused to send any troops. Zhao Gao, the minister of the household, relied on the emperor's favor to act in an incredibly tyrannical and unrestrained manner. Having executed many people out of personal grudges, he feared that high officials would report his deeds during court sessions. Thus, he sought to persuade the second emperor, saying, "The reason the Son of Heaven is considered so noble is that the people only hear his voice, none of his officials are allowed to see his face, thereby maintaining an aura of mystery. Furthermore, your majesty is still young in years and may not yet be fully versed in all matters of state. If you sit in court now and happen to make an inappropriate judgment or criticism, your shortcomings will be revealed to the ministers, which is not the way to project a divine wisdom to the world. Your majesty would be better off remaining secluded within the inner palace, spending your time only with me and the attendants who are well versed in the laws. When matters arise, we can weigh and deliberate upon them in private. In this way, the ministers will not dare to present confusing matters, and the entire world will praise you as a divine and holy ruler." The second emperor followed his plan and ceased to attend court or see his high officials, remaining permanently within the inner palace. With Zhao Gao in charge as an attendant, all matters of state were decided by him. When Gao heard that Li Si had criticized the situation, he went to see the chancellor and said, "The east is full of rebels. yet the emperor is becoming more impatient, increasing forced labor to build the Ofeng Palace and collecting useless things like dogs and horses. I wish to offer counsel, but my status is lowly. This is truly a matter for your lordship. Why do you not speak up? Li Si replied, Indeed, I have been wanting to speak of this for a long time. But nowadays, the emperor does not hold court and always stays deep within the palace. What I have to say cannot be passed through others. I want to see him, but there is never an opportunity. Xiao Gao said, If you truly can offer counsel, allow me to look for an opportunity for your lordship and inform you. Therefore, Xiao Gao waited until the emperor was feasting and enjoying the company of his women, then sent someone to tell the chancellor, The emperor is free now, you may present your matters. The chancellor arrived at the palace gate and submitted his request for an audience. This happened 3 times. The second emperor said in a rage, I have plenty of free days when the chancellor never comes. Yet whenever I am enjoying my private leisure, he always insists on coming to present matters. Does the chancellor look down on me, or is he deliberately trying to constrain me? Xiao Gao took the opportunity to say, the chancellor was a participant in the conspiracy at Shikyu. Now that your majesty is emperor, the chancellor's status has not increased. His intention must be to seek a portion of the land to become a king himself. Besides, if your majesty had not asked, I would not have dared to speak. The chancellor's eldest son, Li Yu, is the magistrate of Sichuan. The Chu rebels, like Chengxin, are all sons of the counties neighboring the chancellor's hometown. For this reason, the rebels march openly past the cities of Sichuan, yet the magistrate refuses to attack them. I have heard that they are exchanging letters, but since I have no proof, I did not dare to mention it. Furthermore, the chancellor remains outside the palace, and his power is greater than your majesty's. The second emperor agreed and wanted to bring the chancellor to trial. Fearing the evidence was not thorough, he first sent people to investigate the situation of the Sichuan magistrate's collusion with the rebels. When Prime Minister Li Si heard about this, he submitted a memorial to expose Xiao Gao's faults, saying, Xiao Gao has usurped the power to bestow rewards and inflict punishments, acting entirely on his own authority. His conduct is no different from that of your majesty. In the past, when Tian Chang served as the prime minister to Duke Jian of Qi, he usurped the sovereign's favor and authority. He won over the common people below and the officials above, eventually assassinating Duke Jian and seizing the state. This is a historical fact known to all under heaven. Now Xiao Gao harbors evil and deviant ambitions and engages in dangerous, rebellious conduct. His private wealth is as immense as that of the Tian family in Qi. He is insatiably greedy, never ceasing his pursuit of profit. His power is second only to your majesty's, and his desires are boundless. He hijacks your prestige, and his intent is like that of Han Qi when he was prime minister to Honan. If your majesty does not take measures against him, I fear he will certainly incite a rebellion. Shi replied, How could you say that? Xiao Gao is a former eunuch, yet he did not indulge his whims when comfortable, nor did he change his heart in times of danger. He has led a clean life and cultivated goodness, bringing himself to this position. He was promoted through loyalty and kept his position through trustworthiness. I truly consider him a virtuous man. Yet you suspect him why? If I do not entrust things to Lord Shao, whom should I employ? Furthermore, Lord Zhou is shrewd, incorruptible, and energetic. He understands human nature below and satisfies me above. You must not doubt him. Shi had always favored and trusted Gao. Fearing that Li Si might kill him, he secretly informed Xiao Gao of the matter. Gao said, The only one the prime minister fears is me. Once I am dead, the prime minister will intend to do exactly what Tian Chang did. At that time, the rebels grew more numerous every day, and the mobilization of troops from within the Guanzhong Pass to head east and strike the rebels continued without end. Right Chancellor Feng Tuji, Left Chancellor Li Si, and General Feng Jia submitted a joint admonition, saying, Rebels have risen throughout the regions east of the pass. Although Qin has dispatched troops to pursue and strike them, killing and dispersing vast numbers, they still do not cease. The reason there are so many rebels is that the duties of border defense, water transport, logistics, and construction are too agonizing, and the taxes are too heavy. We request that the construction of the Alfeng Palace be halted for now, and that the border defense and transport duties in all directions be reduced. Arsha replied, the reason one values possessing the empire is to be able to indulge one's whims and satisfy all desires to the fullest. If the ruler emphasizes clear and harsh laws, those below will not dare to do wrong, thus enabling him to control and govern all within the seas. As for the rulers of the Yu and Xiao dynasties, though they were noble as sons of heaven, they personally endured poverty and hardship to serve the common people. If that is the case, what is the point of the law? Furthermore, the late emperor rose from among the feudal lords and unified the empire. Once the empire was settled, he repelled the barbarians on all sides to secure the borders and built palaces to manifest his satisfaction. You have seen how the late emperor's achievements were well established. Now, within 2 years of my accession, rebels have risen everywhere. You cannot suppress them, yet you wish to halt what the late emperor initiated. This means, above, you fail to repay the late emperor, and below, you fail to serve me with loyalty. How can you remain in your positions? He then handed Q, C, and Jia over to the judicial officials to be investigated and charged with other crimes. Q and Jia committed suicide, while Li Si alone went to prison. Arsha entrusted Zhao Gao with the trial. He was ordered to interrogate Si and his son Yu regarding their alleged conspiracy to rebel, and all their kinsmen and retainers were arrested. Zhao Gao interrogated Si, subjecting him to over 1,000 lashes of heavy torture. Unable to endure the agonizing pain, Li Si falsely confessed to the charges. The reason Si did not die was that he took pride in his eloquence and achievements. Since he truly had no rebellious intent, he wished to submit a letter to explain himself, hoping that Arsha would realize the truth and pardon him. Thus, he submitted a letter from prison, saying, I have served as prime minister and governed the people for over 30 years. At the time I started, Qin's territory was cramped, covering no more than 1,000 li, with only a few 100,000 troops. I exhausted my meager talents, secretly dispatched strategists, provided them with gold and jade to persuade the feudal lords, clandestinely refined armor and weaponry, overhauled the administration and education, appointed brave warriors to office, and honored those who rendered great service. Consequently, we eventually intimidated Han, weakened Wei, crushed Yan and Shao, and annihilated Qi and Chu. We finally annexed the 6 states, captured their kings, and established the ruler of Qin as the Son of Heaven. Furthermore, we drove the Hu and He peoples from the north and pacified the Baiwa in the south, demonstrating the unparalleled strength of Qin. I overhauled the laws and regulations, standardized weights and measures, and distributed our decrees and scripts throughout the world to establish the prestige of Qin. If these are all my crimes, then I should have died long ago. I was only fortunate that my abilities were fully utilized, allowing me to survive until now. I beg your majesty to look into this. When the letter was submitted, Zhao Gao ordered the officials to discard it and not present it to the emperor, saying, how can a prisoner be allowed to submit a memorial? Zhao Gao sent over a dozen of his retainers to pose as imperial censors, ushers, and palace attendants to repeatedly interrogate Si. Si, still telling the truth in his responses, was then subjected to further beatings each time. Later, when Arsha actually sent someone to verify Si's case, Si, thinking it was the same as before, ultimately said nothing more. His confession was finalized, and the judgment was submitted to the emperor. Arsha rejoiced, saying, without Lord Shao, I would have been nearly betrayed by the prime minister. By the time the messenger sent by Arsha to investigate Li Yu, the magistrate of Sichuan, arrived, the Chu troops had already struck and killed him. When the messenger returned, it coincided with the investigation into the prime minister. Gao fabricated testimonies of rebellion and distorted facts to fit his claims, eventually subjecting Si to the full 5 punishments and sentencing him to be cut in 2 at the waist in the marketplace of Sanying. As Si left the prison, he and his middle son were both held in bonds. Looking back at his middle son, he said, I wish I could once more lead a yellow dog with you out through the east gate of Shengsai to chase the cunning hares, but how could that be possible now? They wed together, and then their entire clan was exterminated. Shi then appointed Zhao Gao as the prime minister, and all matters, great and small, were decided by him. After the formidable Xiang Liang crushed the renowned Qin general Zhang Han at Dongyi, he led his triumphant forces westward and then marched north to Dingtao, where he dealt another devastating blow to the Qin army. The youthful hero Xiang Yu and the magnanimous lord of Pei, Lu Bang, joined forces to engage the fierce Qin army at Yongzhou. With overwhelming momentum, they shattered the enemy ranks and decapitated Li Yu, the magistrate of Sichuan and son of the Qin chancellor Li Si. In the wake of a dreamlike string of victories, the commander Xiang Liang experienced a subtle shift in temperament. He grew increasingly dismissive of the Qin forces he once feared, and an air of insufferable arrogance began to show on his face. The sagacious Song Yi perceived the shadows lurking behind the victories and warned with great concern. Since ancient times, if the commander becomes arrogant and the soldiers grow slack after winning battles, then defeat is surely waiting for them nearby. Currently, the situation is shifting rapidly. Our soldiers have already shown signs of lethargy, while Qin reinforcements are increasing day by day. I truly feel a deep sense of trepidation and worry for you. However, Xiang Liang, immersed in the halo of victory, completely refused to heed this unpleasant but honest advice, dismissively waving away Song Yi's proposal. Not only did Xiang Liang ignore the warning, but to get rid of the nagging Song Yi, he dispatched him as an envoy to the state of Qi. On the road, Song Yi happened to encounter the Qi envoy, Lord Jieling, named Xian. Lord Jieling Xian asked politely, "Are you on your way to pay your respects to the renowned Lord Wuxin, Xiang Liang?" Song Yi nodded with a solemn expression and replied, "Indeed." Song Yi asserted with startling confidence, "By my estimation, Lord Wuxin's army is destined for a crushing defeat. If you travel slowly, you may escape with your life, but if you hurry, you will surely collide with catastrophe." As expected, the second emperor mobilized all the elite forces from within the pass to reinforce Zhang Han. Zhang Han launched an overwhelming surprise attack at Dingtao, shattering the unprepared Chu army and resulting in the death of its commander, Xiang Liang, in the bloody conflict. At that time, the heavens offered no mercy, as cold winds and continuous rain persisted from the bleak 7th month through the somber 9th month, as if the earth itself were mourning the fall of a hero. Xiang Yu and the Lord of Pei were then leading an assault on Wai Wang, but due to the defenders' stubborn resistance, they were unable to capture it. They abandoned the siege and launched a new offensive against Chenlu. When the tragic news of Lord Wuxin's death arrived, a wave of panic swept through the Chu army. After consulting with General Chen, Xiang Yu and Lu Bang decided to withdraw their forces eastward and relocate King Wai from the remote Shui to the strategic city of Pengcheng, establishing it as their new capital. Chen stationed his personal troops on the eastern outskirts of Pengcheng. Xiang Yu held the western side of the city, and the Lord of Pei withdrew his forces to Dang, forming a triangular defensive posture. Amidst this turmoil, Weibo demonstrated remarkable combat prowess, capturing more than 20 cities in the ancestral lands of Wei. To honor his achievements and secure the loyalty of various factions, King Wai of Chu formally established Weibao as the king of Wei. During the intercalary 9th month of that year, taking advantage of the power vacuum left by Xiang Liang, King Wai decisively merged the personal armies of Chen and Xiang Yu, assuming direct personal command over them and reclaiming supreme military authority. King Wai appointed the Lord of Pei as the governor of Dang Commandery and bestowed upon him the title of Marquis of Wuan, authorizing him to command all the elite troops within the Dang region. At the same time, he bestowed the title of Marquis of Chaonan upon Xiang Yu and honored him with the title Duke of Lu. Furthermore, Chen was appointed as the minister over the masses, while his father, Qin, was named the prime minister, Yin, of Chu. After Zhang Han won the great victory at Dingtao and killed Xiang Liang, he fell into the illusion that the remnants of the Chu army were no longer a threat. Consequently, he led his fierce troops across the Yellow River and marched north to assault the state of Shao, where he utterly crushed the Zhao army. Zhang Han led his unstoppable army into the Zhou capital of Hangdan. He issued brutal orders, forcibly relocating all the city's inhabitants to the Henan region and mercilessly razing the ancient city's walls and structures to the ground. The Chancellor of Shao, Zhang Er, and King Xia of Shao had nowhere else to turn and fled in haste into the city of Jiulu. The Qin general Wang Li, leading the Great War Army, arrived upon hearing the news and surrounded Jiulu so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak out. The Shao general Cheng Yu desperately gathered scattered troops from the Changshan area in the north, managing to assemble an army of tens of thousands. He stationed his troops north of Jiulu, facing the Qin army from a distance but not daring to launch an attack. The shrewd Zhang Han stationed his main forces at Jiyuan, south of Jiulu, and constructed protected corridors to transport grain and supplies to Wang Li's besieging army. Seeing that Jiulu was on the verge of falling, the state of Shao repeatedly sent urgent pleas for help to Chu, begging the Chu army to rush north to lift the siege. Lord Jilingxian, who had previously met Song Yi on the road, was in Chu at this time. He entered the palace to pay his respects to King Wai and said, "Initially, Mr. Song Yi deduced that the army of Lord Wuxin, Xiang Liang, was destined for a crushing defeat. As it happened, a few days later, the army was indeed annihilated at Dingtao. To be able to accurately foresee the omens of defeat before the two sides even engage, this is the mark of a man who truly understands the art of war." King Wai immediately summoned Song Yi for a deep discussion on the affairs of the state. Song Yi's penetrating analysis filled King Wai with joy, leading him to appoint Song Yi on the spot as the supreme commander of the Chu army. Xiang Yu was appointed as the deputy general and Fan Zhen as the tertiary general, leading the troops north to rescue the besieged state of Shao. All subordinate and auxiliary generals were placed under Song Yi's command. Out of awe and esteem, the people honored him with the title Qingzi Guanjun, the peerless noble champion. Initially, King Wai of Chu made a solemn covenant with his generals: whosoever first enters and pacifies the heartland within the Hango Pass shall be crowned the king of Guangzhou. At that critical juncture of life and death, the Qin army still maintained formidable combat strength, frequently pursuing defeated rebel forces. Consequently, most generals were hesitant, viewing a solo deep thrust into Guangzhou as an extremely dangerous and unprofitable endeavor. Only Xiang Yu, harboring a deep hatred for the Qin after the death of his uncle Xiang Liang, stepped forward with fierce resolve, expressing his willingness to lead troops west into Guangzhou alongside the Lord of Pei. The experienced and cautious veteran generals around King Wai discussed, "As for Xiang Yu, he is by nature fierce and domineering, and his methods can even be somewhat insidious and cruel. He once led an assault on Xiangqing, and after its capture, he left no one alive, burying the entire population and military alive. Every place his army passed through was nearly destroyed, left as nothing but scorched earth. Furthermore, our Chu forces have launched multiple proactive offensives, but both King Chengsheng and General Xiang Liang suffered tragic defeats previously. Therefore, it would be better to dispatch a virtuous and prestigious elder instead, marching westward with the banner of righteousness to enlighten and appease the elders and brethren of the Qin lands. The people of Qin have suffered long enough under the oppression of their tyrant. If we truly send an elder who refrains from pillaging and refrains from disturbing the populace, then the cities of Qin can surely be persuaded to surrender peacefully. Xiang Yu must absolutely not be sent. Only the Lord of Pei, who has always been kind and righteous and is a virtuous elder of both character and talent, is fit for this arduous mission." King Wai thus flatly refused Xiang Yu's request and instead dispatched Lu Bang to seize territory in the west. He ordered Lu Bang to gather the scattered remnants of Chengsheng and Xiang Lian's armies along the way, amassing strength to crusade against Qin. Commissioned to head west, the Lord of Pei traveled via Dang and arrived at Yangcheng and Gangli. He commanded with composure, fiercely attacking the fortified Qin camps and crushing the two Qin armies stationed there. It was the third year of the reign of the second emperor of Qin, Hu Hai, the year of Jiaowu, or 207 BC, a turning point that would alter the course of history. In the cold 10th month, the Qi general Tian Du openly rebelled against the powerful Tianrong. He resolutely led his troops south, deciding to assist the Chu forces in a joint mission to rescue the state of Shao, which was in dire peril. Meanwhile, the Lord of Pei displayed his might near Chenggu, decisively defeating the troops of the Qin commandant of Dong Commandery who had intercepted him there. Supreme General Song Yi led the Grand Chu Army, the beacon of national restoration, to the strategic stronghold of Ongyang. There, he remained stationed for a full 46 days, refusing to advance a single step despite the raging fires of war in the distance. The Deputy General Xiang Yu, burning with urgency as he witnessed the perilous situation, burst into the tent and shouted to Song Yi, "The Qin siege of Jiulu has reached a critical breaking point. We must lead our troops across the Yellow River with lightning speed to provide immediate relief. If our Chu forces launch a fierce assault from the outside while the Shao troops strike from within in coordination, then the total destruction of the Qin army will be an absolute certainty." Song Yi shook his head dismissively and countered, "You are mistaken. Just as a gadfly that can harass a mighty ox cannot simultaneously crush tiny gnats and lice. In the current geopolitical game, the Qin army is launching an all-out assault on Zhao. If they happen to emerge victorious, their elite ranks will surely be exhausted, allowing us to strike at their moment of greatest weakness and reap the rewards. Should the Qin forces fail in their siege and fall back, we can then march westward with grand momentum, beating our drums in triumph. At that point, the total annihilation of the Qin dynasty will be child's play. Therefore, the superior tactic right now is to stand by and watch coldly, letting the houses of Qin and Zhao fight each other to the death first. In terms of donning heavy armor and wielding sharp weapons to lead the charge, I, Song Yi, indeed cannot compare to you, General Xiang. But when it comes to sitting back and devising grand strategies, you are far inferior to me." He then immediately issued a draconian iron rule throughout the army: should anyone be as frantic as a tiger, as stubborn as a goat, as greedy as a wolf, or so defiant in their arrogance that they refuse to follow commands, they shall all be executed without exception. Immediately following this, he dispatched his son, Song Xiang, to serve as the Chancellor of Qi, personally escorting him as far as Wuyan. There, he hosted lavish banquets, indulging in song and wine through grand festivities. It was then the height of midwinter, with biting winds and chilling rains pouring from the sky. The poor soldiers at the front shivered in the storms, their stomachs hollow with gnawing hunger. Xiang Yu, filled with indignation, said to his subordinates, "A commander should unite all forces to assault the mighty Qin, yet he cowers here, remaining stationed for so long and refusing to march. This year has been plagued by harvest failure and the people are destitute. The soldiers survive on nothing but a few watery beans, and there isn't a single scrap of reserve grain in the camp. Yet, he actually has the heart to indulge in debauchery and host grand festivities. He refuses to lead the army across the Yellow River to subsist on Zhao's supplies and combine forces with them to strike Qin. Instead, he has the audacity to claim he is exploiting their exhaustion. Given the tiger and wolf-like strength of the Qin army as they assault the newly restored and unstable state of Shao, the momentum will inevitably lead to Shao's total conquest. Once Shao is conquered and the Qin army grows even stronger, what exhaustion will there be left for us to exploit? Furthermore, our Chu army has just suffered a fresh defeat, and King Y is so anxious he cannot sit still. He has emptied the national treasury and entrusted all his troops to you. The very survival of our nation hinges entirely upon this single, decisive move. Yet now, you show no compassion for the soldiers suffering and seek only your own family's private interests. You are by no means a loyal minister of the state." One morning in the 11th month, Xiang Yu went to pay his morning respects at the tent of Supreme General Song Yi, just as he did every day. Taking Song Yi completely by surprise, Xiang Yu suddenly drew his sword and, within the very heart of the tent, severed Song Yi's head with a single stroke. Carrying Song Yi's severed head, Xiang Yu stepped out of the tent and sternly announced to the entire army, Song Yi was conspiring with Qi to betray Chu. King Y has secretly issued an edict ordering me, Xiang Ji, to execute him. At that blood-soaked moment, every general was utterly terrified and awed by Xiang Yu's overwhelming dominance. They all held their breath in silence, and not a single soul dared to utter a word of resistance. The generals, recovering their senses, chimed in agreement. The ones who first restored the great state of Chu were indeed the members of your family, General Xiang. By executing this traitor today, you have truly performed a great service. Consequently, they all joined together to establish Xiang Yu as the acting supreme general. Xiang Yu immediately dispatched men to pursue Song Yi's son, Song Xiang. They finally caught up with him within the borders of Qi and executed him ruthlessly. Xiang Yu sent his general Huan Chu to report the situation to King Huai. Faced with a fait accompli, the king had no choice but to go with the flow, formally appointing Xiang Yu as the supreme general. In the 12th month of that same year, the lord of Pei, Lu Ban, led his army to Li County, where he happened to encounter the Marquis of Dongwu. Lu Ban swiftly incorporated the more than 4,000 soldiers under the Marquis of Dongwu into his own ranks. Subsequently, he joined forces with the troops of the Wei generals Huang Xian and Wu Man to launch a combined assault on the Qin army, resulting in a grand victory and the total defeat of the enemy. Tianhan, the grandson of the late Tongjian of Qi, successfully pacified the Jibei region and then led his followers to join Xiang Yu in the northern mission to rescue Shao. To ensure his logistics were secure, the Qin general Zhang Han constructed a fortified yangdao, a walled corridor, connecting to the Yellow River, using it to continuously transport grain and supplies to Wang Li's army besieging Jiulu. Wang Li's elite Qin troops were strong and well-fed, with abundant grain reserves, enabling them to launch an overwhelming and fierce assault on the city of Jiulu. Inside the city of Jiulu, food supplies had long been exhausted and the remaining soldiers were few and wounded. Zhang He, the chancellor of Shao, was frantic and repeatedly sent messengers to Chen Yu, who was stationed nearby, urging him to advance immediately to provide relief. Chen Yu coolly assessed the meager forces at his disposal and concluded that they were no match for Qin's Great Wall army. Consequently, he hesitated and dared not advance a single step. Several months passed, and seeing that relief was nowhere in sight, Zhang He flew into a towering rage, harboring a deep and gnawing resentment toward Chen Yu. He dispatched Dong Yan and Chen Zhe to severely reprimand Chen Yu, saying, "Initially, you and I were pledged as friends unto death. Yet now, the king and I are in such dire peril that we may become ghosts beneath the blade at any moment, morning or night. Yet you, commanding tens of thousands of troops, stand by and refuse to offer aid. Where is that dying for one another sentiment you so loudly proclaimed? If you still hold any trace of credit or honor, why do you not charge into the Qin ranks and join us in a heroic death? Perhaps in such a desperate struggle, there might even be a 10 or 20% chance of survival." Chen Yu defended himself, saying, "I estimate that even if I were to charge forward now, I could not save Shao in the end. Instead, I would only sacrifice this last remaining force for nothing. Furthermore, the reason I refuse to die alongside you now is that I wish to preserve my life so that I may later avenge the king of Shao and yourself against the state of Qin. If we must go to our deaths now, it would be just like throwing fresh meat to a starving tiger. What possible benefit could there be?" Zhang Yan and Chen Zhe remained relentless, insisting that Chen Yu deploy his troops, even if it meant everyone dying together. Forced by necessity, Chen Yu finally assigned them 5,000 troops to test the strength of the Qin army. As a result, the moment these 5,000 reached the battlefield, they were instantly swallowed up and annihilated by the Qin forces. At that critical moment when life hung by a thread, the armies of Qi and Yan had also arrived near Jiulu, intending to provide relief to Shao. Zhang He's son, Zhang Ele, had also raised more than 10,000 soldiers from Dai in the north and arrived to help. Yet, once they reached the site, they all did nothing but cautiously set up camp alongside Chen Yu, none daring to lead an attack against the Qin army. After Xiang Yu executed Song Yi and seized command, his overwhelming prestige and dominance instantly sent shockwaves throughout the entire state of Chu. He then dispatched Ying Bu, the lord of Danyang, and General Bo to lead 20,000 elite troops across the Yellow River as the vanguard to rescue Jiulu. The initial skirmishes met with some small successes, and the Chu forces managed to sever the walled corridors constructed by Zhang Han. For a time, Wang Li's besieging army began to suffer from a dire shortage of grain and supplies as their lines were cut. Chen Yu, seeing how courageous the Chu troops were and how they had actually shaken the Qin lines, once again requested that Xiang Yu's main force launch a full assault. Seeing that the moment had arrived, Xiang Yu led the remaining main body of the Chu army grandly across the Yellow River. After crossing the river, Xiang Yu ordered all the boats to be scuttled, all the cooking pots and vessels to be smashed, and all the tents and shelters to be set ablaze. He ordered each soldier to carry only 3 days' worth of rations, demonstrating to the entire army his resolve: we either emerge victorious or die in battle. There is absolutely no intention of returning alive. Thus, upon arriving at Jiulu, the Chu troops charged like tigers down a mountain to surround Wang Li's units. They engaged in a head-on collision with the main Qin forces, fighting 9 separate, grueling, and world-shaking battles, finally shattering the Qin army completely. Seeing Wang Li's main force utterly collapse, even Wang Han, who had been providing support from the south, was awed by the Chu army's murderous aura and was forced to lead his remaining troops in a retreat. Only then did the various armies of the feudal lords, who had been watching from their camps, dare to rush out and attack the fleeing Qin troops. In the chaos, they killed the Qin general Su Jiao and captured the commander-in-chief, Wang Li. The Qin general Shi Jian remained unyielding and refused to surrender, ultimately choosing to immolate himself to die for the Qin cause. At that moment, the combat strength of the Chu army was unparalleled in the world, making them the undisputed sovereigns among all the feudal lords' forces. Initially, the armies from various states that had come to rescue Jiulu were stationed in more than a dozen camps, yet none of them dared to dispatch a single soldier to challenge the Qin. When the Chu army launched their desperate assault on the Qin, those feudal generals actually spent the entire time watching from behind the walls of their fortifications. Every single Chu warrior fought with the strength of 10 men, their battle cries shaking the heavens. Their world-shattering roars seemed capable of rending the firmament and crushing the earth beneath their feet. Hearing these roars of slaughter, the soldiers of the various feudal lords were, without exception, struck with trembling terror, each fearing for their own life. Once the Qin army was utterly destroyed, Xiang Yu majestically issued a command to summon the generals of the various feudal lords. As those feudal generals entered the camp gates, they were all so terrified that they crawled forward on their knees. Not a single one of them dared to lift their head to look Xiang Yu in the eye. From this point on, Xiang Yu truly became the supreme general of all the feudal lords. From then, all the lords of the world were subordinated to him, following his every command. Following this earth-shaking battle, King Xiao Shao and Chancellor Zhang He were finally able to survive and walk out of the blood-soaked, isolated city of Jiulu to express their sincerest gratitude to the lords of various states who had risked their lives to rescue them. Zhang He, having survived the ordeal, met Chengyu in the camp, where their former life and death pact had long evaporated into the smoke of war. With a face full of fury, he sternly rebuked Chengyu for cowering and refusing to lend a hand when Shao's life hung by a thread. Zhang He then anxiously inquired about the whereabouts of his beloved generals Zhong Yan and Chen Sei. Seeing Chen Yu's evasive response, a cold suspicion arose in his heart, convincing him that Chen Yu had secretly murdered them, leading him to sternly interrogate Chen Yu repeatedly about the matter. Infuriated by these repeated interrogations, Chen Yu roared with indignation, "I never imagined that you would harbor such deep-seated resentment and misunderstanding toward me. Do you truly believe I am the kind of coward who fears death and clings greedily to this general's seal?" With those words, he abruptly tore the seal and ribbon from his waist and thrust them fiercely before Zhang He to demonstrate his resolve. Stunned by this sudden action, Zhang He stood frozen in place for a moment, too bewildered to reach out and accept them. Seeing the atmosphere frozen, Chengyu rose indignantly and left the tent under the pretext of going to the latrine, seeking to calm the fury within his chest. At that moment, a retainer by Zhang He's side lowered his voice and urgently advised, "I have heard that if one does not take what heaven bestows, one will instead suffer heaven's punishment. Now that General Chengyu has taken the initiative to hand you the seal, if you do not accept it, you are defying the will of heaven, which is extremely inauspicious. Quickly take it before he regrets it." Lured by ambition, Zhang He actually fastened that great seal to his waist and swiftly issued orders to take command of all the soldiers under Chengyu's authority. When Chengyu returned and saw that Zhang He was actually wearing the seal with a clear conscience, making no attempt to decline or return it, he trembled with rage and extreme resentment. He spun around abruptly and rushed out of the tent without looking back. Solitary and isolated, He took only a few hundred trusted confidants from his ranks and indignantly headed for the marshlands along the banks of the Yellow River, living a secluded life of fishing and hunting to express his break with and contempt for Zhongnir. Amidst the chaos of power transition, King Xie of Shao, burdened with exhaustion, set out on his return to his capital, Xindu. As time turned to the second month of spring, the Lord of Pei, Lu Ban, led his army north to attack Chang'e, where he chanced upon the hero Peng Yu. Impressed by Lu Ban's heroic aura, Peng Yu brought his troops to join and serve under him. Peng Yu himself was a native of Chang'e. He originally lived for years amidst the lush reed beds of the Jun marshes, making a living by fishing and organizing a band of men, becoming a famous rebel group labeled as bandits by the Qin court. When Chen Sheng and Xiang Liang rose up to rebel against the Qin tyranny, more than 100 passionate youths in the Jun marshes gathered together and approached Peng Yu, saying, "Please, Master Sheng, come and lead us as our chief." Peng Yu repeatedly waved his hands in refusal, saying, "I only wish to live a quiet life. I truly do not want to engage in such life-threatening business." After the youths pleaded repeatedly, Peng Yu reluctantly agreed and made a pact with them. They were to gather at sunrise the next day, and anyone who was late would be decapitated as a warning to all. When sunrise came the next day, it turned out that more than 10 people were late, with the last one dragging his feet until noon before arriving. Seeing this, Peng Yu said with a look of displeasure, "I was already advanced in years, yet you all insisted on electing me as your chief. But since we set a time and so many of you were late, I cannot very well kill everyone. Therefore, I shall execute the person who arrived latest." He coldly ordered his officers to take the last person who arrived and execute him. The youth thought Peng Yu was joking and said with light-hearted laughter, "Oh, why take it to such an extreme? We promise we'll never dare to be late again." Amidst the laughter, Peng Yu, his face as cold as frost, personally had the men taken out and executed. He then established an altar, using the severed head to offer sacrifice and discipline their army. The crowd of youths was terrified out of their wits, and from then on, no one dared to even lift their head to look at him. From that point on, Peng Yu led his troops to conquer territory and gather soldiers scattered during the war from various states, quickly amassing an elite force of over 1,000 men. Subsequently, he led this troop to fully assist the Lord of Pei, Lu Ban, in attacking Chang'e. The city of Chang'e was exceptionally fortified and held out against the assault. The Lord of Pei, Lu Ban, decisively abandoned the siege and led his grand army further westward, passing through the region of Biang. In Biang, there was a man named Li Yiqi. Though he was full of profound learning, he came from a poor family and was quite destitute, forced to serve as an insignificant gatekeeper in the local neighborhood. A cavalryman under the Lord of Pei happened to be an acquaintance from the same neighborhood as Li Yiqi. Upon seeing him, Li Yiqi spoke to him meaningfully. "I have observed that several dozen generals from various states have passed through Biang, but upon careful observation, I found most of them to be narrow-minded, obsessed with trivial etiquette, and stubbornly self-willed, completely incapable of listening to grand and visionary words. I have heard that the Lord of Pei, Lu Ban, though arrogant in behavior and informal, possesses peerless and grand strategic vision. He is the truly enlightened master I wish to follow. My only regret is that I have no one to introduce me first. If you see the Lord of Pei, tell him, in my hometown, there is an elderly master Li, over 60 years old and 8 feet tall, with a commanding presence. Everyone calls him the crazy scholar. But he himself says, I am by no means a mad scholar who only speaks big words." The cavalryman was startled and hurried to advise, "The Lord of Pei has always despised scholars. Whenever someone wearing a scholar's cap comes to see him, he often snatches their cap away and even urinates in it. When he speaks to people, he's always cursing and shouting. You must absolutely not try to persuade him with the refined demeanor of a scholar." Li Yiqi was completely unconcerned and smiled calmly, saying, "Just tell him exactly what I said." The cavalryman found a suitable opportunity and calmly followed Li Yiqi's instructions, telling Lu Ban everything word for word. After arriving in Biang with his army and staying at the relay station, Lu Ban immediately sent someone to summon Li Yiqi, who claimed he was not a crazy scholar. Li Yiqi arrived in response to the summons and walked into the relay station with a composed demeanor to pay his respects. At that time, Lu Bang was reclining casually on the bed, having two young women attend to washing his feet. He received Li Yiqi in this extremely arrogant and informal manner. Li Yiqi entered the room, merely offering a polite bow with his hands raised. Standing tall and proud, he neither prostrated himself nor showed any sign of humility. He asked loudly, "Do you intend to assist the tyrannical Qin in attacking the various lords? Or do you intend to lead the various lords to utterly destroy the Qin?" Lu Bang cursed in anger, "You ignorant little scholar. The people of the world have suffered under the tyranny of Qin for far too long. That is why heroes from all quarters have risen together to attack Qin. How dare you say I am assisting Qin in attacking the lords?" Li Yiqi replied unhurriedly, "If you truly intend to gather a righteous army to crusade against the cruel and lawless Qin, then you should not receive a virtuous and respected elder with such an arrogant and disrespectful attitude." Hearing those words, Lu Bang's expression immediately turned solemn. He at once stopped washing his feet, stood up, and respectfully straightened his clothes. He invited Li Yiqi to the seat of honor and sincerely apologized to him. Li Yiqi then sat down and, with great eloquence, provided Lu Bang with a deep analysis of the successes and failures of the vertical alliance and horizontal alliance strategies of the six states during the Warring States period. Lu Bang was overjoyed and rewarded Li Yiqi with a magnificent feast. Then, with great humility, he leaned in and asked, "In that case, Master, how should our next strategy be devised to achieve our great mission?" Li Yiqi analyzed calmly, "You are currently leading a motley crew gathered in haste, along with scattered soldiers from defeated armies. Your total force does not even reach 10,000 men. If you intend to use this meager force to charge directly into the heartland of the tiger-like, powerful Qin, it would be exactly like sticking your hand into a tiger's mouth. You'd be walking straight into a trap. Now, Chenglu County is a vital transportation hub of the world, a strategic crossroad reachable from all directions. And currently, within that city, there is an immense stockpile of grain, enough to sustain a large army for a long time. I happen to have a deep personal friendship with the local magistrate. Please allow me to represent you and speak to him. I am confident I can persuade him to surrender the entire county to you. And if he is so foolish as to refuse to surrender, you can then lead your grand army in an assault. At that time, I will act as your insider to coordinate from within, and Chenglu will surely fall." Lu Bang acted decisively, immediately dispatching Li Yiqi. He then personally led his grand army to follow closely behind, and ultimately, through Li Yiqi's maneuvers, successfully captured the strategic stronghold of Chenglu. To richly reward Li Yiqi for his peerless achievement, Lu Bang ceremoniously bestowed upon him the title Lord of Guangya. Li Yiqi then recommended his younger brother, Li Shang, to Lu Bang. At that time, Li Shang had already gathered more than 4,000 passionate youths locally, and he brought this fresh force to join Lu Bang. Overjoyed, Lu Bang immediately appointed Li Shang as a general. From then on, Li Shang led the elite troops originally from Chenglu to follow Lu Bang in campaigns far and wide, while Li Yiqi frequently served as a top-level diplomatic emissary, shuttling between the various lords. When the third month arrived, the Lord of Pei, Lu Bang, led his forces in a fierce assault on Kaifeng, but because the city was fortified and the defenders resisted stubbornly, he was unable to capture it for the time being. Lu Bang led his army further westward and engaged in a world-shaking head-on battle with the Grand Qing general Yang Xiong near Beima. Subsequently, another fierce battle broke out east of Suyu. In both engagements, Lu Bang emerged grandly victorious, shattering Yang Xiong's troops into total disarray. Yang Xiong fled in panic with his remnant troops to Xinyang. Upon hearing the news of the defeat, the fatuous second emperor, Hu Hai, was filled with rage and sent an envoy to behead Yang Xiong on the spot, displaying his severed head to the public to intimidate other generals. In the summer, during the fourth month, the Lord of Pei, Lu Bang, led his army southward, launching a fierce assault on Yingchuan and massacring the city after its fall. Relying on the strategies and local influence of Shuangliang, Lu Bang proceeded to seize and occupy the former territories of the state of Han. At that time, Sima Ang, a subordinate general of Shao, was also preparing his troops to cross the Yellow River and race to enter the Hango Pass. To block his rival, Liu Bang marched north to attack Pinyin, cut off the southern Yellow River crossings, and engaged in a fierce battle with Qin forces east of Luoyang. The engagement did not favor the Chu army, so Liu Bang decisively led his troops southward, retreating through the rugged and treacherous Wanyuan Pass. The strategist Zhang Liang also led his own detachment of elite troops and followed closely by the side of the Lord of Pei, Liu Bang. Liu Bang ordered King Qin Hong to remain and guard Yangdi, then he marched southward side by side with Zhang Liang. In the 6th month, Liu Bang's army engaged the Nanyang magistrate Louis east of Chou County. Liu Bang crushed the Qin forces and proceeded to sweep through and occupy the entire Nanyang commandery. After his crushing defeat, the Nanyang magistrate Louis fled in panic into the heavily fortified city of Wan, preparing for a desperate stand. Anxious to reach the pass, Liu Bang initially had no intention of a direct assault on Wan, leading his army past the city and heading straight west. Zhang Liang urgently advised, "Though your lordship is eager to enter the pass, the Qin forces there remain numerous and hold nearly impenetrable strategic heights. If we do not capture Wan now, their forces will strike us from the rear while we face the powerful Qin army ahead. This is a path to certain ruin." Awakened by the warning, Liu Bang led his army back under the cover of night along a different route, lowering his banners and moving in complete silence. By the break of dawn, Liu Bang's troops had appeared as if from nowhere, encircling the city of Wan in 3 tight rings. Seeing himself surrounded, the Nanyang magistrate Louis attempted to slit his own throat in despair. His retainer, Cheng Hui, quickly stopped him, saying, "My lord, it is not yet too late for death." Thus Cheng Hui scaled the wall and went to meet Liu Bang, saying, "I have heard that your lordship has a pact. He who first enters Xianying shall be made its king. Currently, you are stalled here at Wan. Nanyang Commandery oversees dozens of connected cities, whose officials and people believe they will surely be executed if they surrender, so they all fight desperately atop the walls. If your lordship spends your days in endless frontal assaults, the casualties among your soldiers will undoubtedly be immense. Should you lead your army away from Wan, the defenders here will surely follow like shadows to strike you from the rear at the first opportunity. At that point, advancing would mean missing your pact regarding Xianying, while looking back, you would face the grave threat of Wan's powerful forces. You would be trapped. To plan for your lordship, nothing would be better than reaching a surrender pact and rewarding the Nanyang magistrate with a prestigious title. Then, let him remain here to maintain order, while you take their elite armored soldiers to join your march to the west. All the other uncaptured cities, hearing that Wan surrendered and its leader was rewarded, will surely race to open their gates and welcome you. You will then march unimpeded, free from all encumbrances." Liu Bang clapped his hands in admiration and exclaimed, "Magnificent." In the autumn, during the 7th month, the Nanyang magistrate Louis formally surrendered. Keeping his word, Liu Bang unfettered him as the Marquis of Yin and granted Cheng Hui the tax revenue from 1,000 households. Leading his army further westward, Liu Bang found that every Qin city in his path fell like autumn leaves, with none failing to surrender. As the army reached the Dan River region, the Qin nobles Marquis Guo, Sai, and Marquis Xiang, Wang Ling, seeing the cause was lost, surrendered their followers to Liu Bang. Liu Bang turned his forces back to attack Huyang, where he chanced upon Mei Xian, a subordinate general of the Lord of Pan, Wu Rui. Joining forces, they captured the counties of Xi and Li in one swift effort, receiving the surrender of all defenders. Liu Bang's army maintained strict discipline. In every place they passed, no looting or harassment of the populace was permitted, and the people of Qin were filled with joy and hope. Following the total annihilation of Wang Li's elite Qin army, the renowned General Zhang Han stationed his remnants at Jiyuan, while the Chu army under Xiang Yu encamped south of the Rong River. The two massive forces remained in a tense standoff, neither initiating a confrontation. The Qin army suffered repeated local setbacks and withdrawals. Upon hearing this, the second emperor in Xianying sent a messenger with a harshly worded reprimand, scolding Zhang Han for his failure to achieve victory. Zhang Han felt a chill down his spine and was filled with dread. To protect himself and explain the situation, he rushed his chief clerk Sima Xian to Xianying to seek instructions from the court on the next strategic moves. Sima Xian arrived at Xianying with great urgency, only to be left waiting outside the Sima gate of the palace for 3 full days. The powerful Zhao Gao refused even to grant him an audience, clearly harboring deep suspicion and distrust toward him and Wang Han. Terribly frightened, Sima Xian realized that a death sentence was imminent. He raced back toward his camp with all his might, and for his own safety, he dared not even use the original main road, sticking to secluded paths instead. As expected, the insidious Zhao Gao immediately dispatched assassins to pursue him, but fortunately, Sima Xian moved fast enough that the killers could not catch him. Still shaken, Sima Xian returned to the camp and lamented to Zhang Han, "That fellow Zhao Gao monopolizes all power at court. For those of us risking our lives out here, there is simply no path left to take. If we win this war, Gao will surely resent and envy our achievements, seeking ways to destroy us. If we lose, we face certain death as criminals. Either way, we are doomed. Therefore, I implore your excellency to reflect upon this deeply and repeatedly, and find a way to survive." At this time, the Zhou general Cheng Yu also sent a heavy secret letter to Wang Han, which read, "In days past, the god of war Bai Qi served as a Qin general. He leveled the Chu cities of Yan and into the south and buried hundreds of thousands of Shao troops under Shao Ku to the north. The cities and territories he conquered for Qin were countless, yet what was his reward? In the end, he was driven to suicide by the king of Qin. And then there is General Meng Tian, who intimidated the Xiongnu to the north and expanded Qin's borders by thousands of li, yet in the end, was he not ruthlessly executed at Yangzhou? Why was that so? Because their merits were so vast that the Qin court could find nothing more to reward or infest them with. Thus, they intentionally fabricated legal pretexts to eliminate them. You have now served as the commander of the Qin forces for 3 years. Your lost troops are numbered in the hundreds of thousands, while the rebel lords across the empire multiply like weeds. That Zhao Gao has always relied on sycophancy to survive. Now that the situation has become so dire, he too fears that Emperor Arsher will turn his rage upon him and have him executed. Therefore, he will surely find a pretext to have you executed as a scapegoat to cover his own failures, and then send someone else to replace you so that he may escape the coming catastrophe himself. You have been away at the front for too long, and your conflicts with those at court have deepened into irreparable rifts. To be blunt, you face death if you succeed, and death if you fail. Furthermore, that heaven intends the destruction of the Qin Empire is an obvious truth recognized by both the simplest minds and the wisest sages. As you are now, unable to offer direct counsel at court and branded as a general of a dying nation abroad, standing alone and isolated yet still hoping to survive, is that not profoundly tragic? Why not simply turn your spears around and join our alliance? We can agree to destroy Qin together, partition its lands, and you too can sit upon a throne as a sovereign ruler. Is this not 1,000 times better than ending up with your body upon the executioner's block and your wife and children slaughtered? After reading the letter, Zhang Han felt torn and indecisive. Secretly, without the court's knowledge, he dispatched an official named Shi Qing to visit Xiang Yu to test the waters and discuss terms for an agreement. Before any surrender terms could be finalized, the impatient Xiang Yu sent General Pu to lead troops across Sanhejin day and night. They encamped south of the Rong River and repeatedly dealt crushing blows to the Qin army. Subsequently, Xiang Yu personally led his entire main force in a general offensive against the Qin army by the banks of the Wu River. The battle was so fierce it eclipsed the sun, and the final remnants of Qin's fighting spirit were utterly shattered. With no other options, the desperate Zhang Han sent a messenger to Xiang Yu once again, speaking with the utmost humility, begging Xiang Yu to accept his surrender. Xiang Yu gathered his commanders and discussed, "Our grain supplies are also nearly exhausted. We might as well go with the flow and accept his surrender." The commanders, hearing that they wouldn't have to risk their lives further and that the war was won, clapped in approval, saying, "Brilliant idea, Commander." Thus, Xiang Yu and Wang Han agreed to meet for a formal surrender ceremony atop the ruins of Yin by the banks of the Wang River. Once the ceremony of the pact was completed, Zhang Han met Xiang Yu, this once mighty grand general actually broke into loud sobs in public, tearfully recounting to Xiang Yu how Shao Gao had persecuted the loyal and driven him to this desperate state. Moved by compassion, Xiang Yu immediately titled Zhang Han as the king of Yong and placed him within the Chu military camp, nominally an honor, but effectively under surveillance. Xiang Yu also appointed chief clerk Sima Xian as the supreme general, tasking him with leading the surrendered Qin remnants as the vanguard of the Chu army. Sheng Yan of Xieju also seized the opportunity to capture the Hunan region, subsequently leading his troops to join and serve under Xiang Yu's command. In the beginning, Zhao Gao, the mid-chancellor who held immense sway, harbored the ambition to monopolize the supreme authority of the Qin Empire. However, he secretly feared that the court officials would not submit to his will, so he devised an insidious test in advance. He brought a deer to present to the second emperor, Hu Hai, and brazenly asserted, "Your Majesty, I have found a rare and magnificent horse to offer you." The second emperor, Hu Hai, could not help but laugh and said, "Is the chancellor mistaken, or perhaps joking with me? How can you call a living deer a horse?" Hu Hai then turned to question the attendants and officials around him. The responses varied. Some were so frightened they remained silent, others went against their conscience and called it a horse to flatter Shao Gao, and of course, there were some upright officials who spoke plainly, saying it was a deer. Shao Gao took note of everyone who spoke the truth and subsequently, in secret, fabricated charges and utilized harsh laws to imprison or execute those officials who had truthfully called it a deer. From then on, all the court officials were terrified of Shao Gao to their very bones, and no one dared to speak of his faults or crimes, whether to his face or behind his back. Zhao Gao had previously, in order to maintain a facade of peace, repeatedly boasted to the emperor, saying, "Those petty bandits east of the pass are of no consequence." This continued until Xiang Yu captured General Wang Li in the Battle of Jiulu, and Zhang Han's main forces suffered repeated crushing defeats, sending blood-stained petitions to the throne begging for reinforcements. Across the vast territories east of the Hango Pass, local officials had basically all rebelled against the Qin dynasty, turning instead to answer the call of the insurgent lords. The grand armies of these lords gathered, their murderous intent clear as they turned their horses' heads westward toward Xianying. It was in the 8th month of that year that the Lord of Pei, Liu Bang, commanding tens of thousands of fierce troops, launched a violent assault on Wu Pass, the southern gateway to Qin, and ruthlessly slaughtered the garrison after capturing the stronghold. Seeing that he could no longer hide the truth, Zhao Gao grew terrified that the second emperor would turn his rage upon him, potentially costing him his life. Consequently, he hurriedly feigned a severe illness, hiding at home and no longer daring to attend the imperial court. The second emperor, Hu Hai, had a bizarre dream in his inner palace. He saw a ferocious white tiger madly biting the horse on the left side of his carriage and killing it. Upon waking, Hu Hai was filled with melancholy and unease, sensing a dire omen. He hurriedly summoned the dream interpreters to inquire about the meaning of this strange dream. The diviner calculated and replied with a solemn expression, "This is the god of the Jing River causing misfortune." The second emperor thus traveled to the Wangyi palace by the Jing River to perform a sincere fast, preparing for a grand sacrifice to the god of the river. He ordered 4 pure white horses to be drowned in the river as offerings, praying for divine protection. Even during his fast, Hu Hai began to feel dissatisfaction with Zhao Gao. He dispatched an envoy to sternly rebuke Gao, accusing him of concealing the situation of the eastern rebel armies and of negligence of duty. Zhao Gao was struck with terror upon receiving the reprimand, knowing his end was near. He secretly gathered his son-in-law, Yan Lu, the magistrate of Xianying, and his younger brother, Zhao Qing, plotting with them. The current emperor is fatuous and lawless, refusing to heed any sound counsel. Now the state of affairs has reached an irredeemable point, and the emperor intends to shift all the blame for the nation's ruin onto me alone. I intend to simply depose the current emperor and instead establish Ziying as the king. Ziying is a man of benevolence and kindness, living a very simple life, and the common people all support and praise him. Thus, Zhao Gao instructed the chamberlain to act as an inside agent within the palace, while he himself claimed outside that major rebels had broken in, ordering Yan Lu to urgently gather officials and troops for pursuit. To ensure Yan Lu did not waver or fight poorly, Zhao Gao even ruthlessly abducted Yan Li's mother and held her as a hostage in his own residence. Zhao Gao dispatched Yan Lu at the head of over 1,000 elite troops, marching with murderous intent toward the Wangyi Palace. Upon reaching the hall gates, they bound the guards without explanation and sternly shouted at the garrison commander, "Rebels have already broken inside. Why did you not stop them?" The garrison commander, looking stunned, argued reasonably. The guard barracks around the palace are arranged with extreme precision and rigor. How could any rebels dare to break into the forbidden palace grounds? Yan Lu gave a cold laugh and drew his sword to slay the commander. He then led his fierce troops directly into the palace, frantically firing arrows as they rushed through. Palace attendants and eunuchs fell one after another, struck by the bolts. The palace attendants and eunuchs were terrified out of their wits, falling into total chaos. Some screamed and fled in all directions, while others instinctively grabbed objects to try and fight back. Those who dared to resist were instantly hacked to death. In an instant, corpses littered the palace floor, with at least several dozen people killed. The chamberlain and Yan Lu burst into the sleeping quarters where Hu Hai was located. They were so emboldened that they fired directly at the curtains surrounding the emperor's throne, arrows piercing the magnificent drapery like rain. The second emperor, Hu Hai, was both shocked and enraged, loudly calling for his personal guards to protect him. However, the attendants he had favored in times of peace were now huddled in fear, lost in panic and daring not to step forward and fight. Only one elderly eunuch remained trembling by Hu Hai's side. Although his face was ashen with fear, he ultimately did not dare to flee amidst the chaotic troops. Hu Hai retreated into the inner chamber, wailing in despair to the eunuch, "Why did you not tell me of Zhao Gao's conspiracy sooner? You have let me fall to such a desperate state today." The eunuch replied softly, "It is precisely because I dared not speak out that I have managed to preserve my meager life. Had I spoken the truth sooner, I fear I would have been executed long ago, just like the officials who called the deer a deer. How could I have lived until this day?" Yan Lu stepped forward with a commanding presence, staring down Hu Hai and loudly recounting his crimes. "You, a fatuous tyrant, were arrogant and unrestrained, slaughtering the innocent with utter ruthlessness. Now, everyone in the world has united to rebel against you. You had better decide for yourself, find a way to bring this to an end." Hu Hai trembled all over and pleaded, "May I see the chancellor?" Yan Lu replied with absolute finality, "Never." Seeing that a meeting was hopeless, Hu Hai lowered his demands, pitifully begging, "Then I only ask to be given a single small commandery, to live as a peaceful prince. Would that be acceptable?" Yan Lu coldly shook his head and refused. Hu Hai, his voice cracking with tears, said again, "Even if I cannot be a king, give me the title of a marquis of 10,000 households, so I may live out my years in peace." Yan Lu remained expressionless, rejecting him flatly. Hu Hai finally fell into total despair, prostrating himself and sobbing as he begged, "I only ask to take my wife and children and live as the lowliest commoners, just like those distant royal relatives, living a simple life. Surely that is acceptable?" Yan Lu impatiently interrupted him, saying sternly, "I have received a death order from the chancellor to execute you for the sake of all people under heaven. No matter how many flowery words you speak, I dare not, and will not, convey a single word to the chancellor." With that, Yan Lu abruptly gestured for his soldiers to surge forward. Seeing no way out and staring into the glint of blades, Hu Hai could only tremblingly raise a weapon and commit suicide in despair. After confirming Hu Hai's death, Yan Lu immediately rushed back to report the success of the coup to Zhao Gao. Zhao Gao then pretentiously summoned all the heavy court officials and the royal scions in Xianying, publicizing the circumstances of Hu Hai's execution and pompously declaring, Qin was originally a feudal kingdom. It was only because the first emperor pacified the world and ruled over all that the title of emperor was adopted. Now the world is in chaos, and the original 6 states have one after another re-established themselves as independent kingdoms, while Qin's territory shrinks by the day. Under such circumstances, it is absolutely unacceptable to cling to the empty and hollow title of emperor. In my view, we should revert to the title of king as before. This would be more fitting and convenient for everyone. Thus, Zhao Gao formally established Ziying as the ruler of the Qin Empire, but his title was no longer emperor, merely king of Qin. Zhao Gao heaped insults upon the deceased Hu Hai, ordering him to be buried as a commoner, with a hasty interment in the Yichun garden south of the local shrine. In the 9th month, Shao Gao ordered King Ziying of Qin to begin a ritual fast, preparing for the appointed day to visit the ancestral temple to pay respects to his forefathers and formally hold the coronation ceremony to receive the imperial seal. Ziying, as required, performed the ritual fast for a full 5 days. Ziying secretly consulted with his 2 sons, saying that wretch Shao Gao murdered the second emperor at Wangyi Palace. He secretly fears that the court officials will unite to execute him, which is why he hypocritically put on an air of righteousness to establish me as the king to deceive the public. I have secretly heard that Shao Gao has, in fact, long since reached a secret agreement with the Chu rebel forces. He intends to completely eradicate our great Qin royal family so that he may divide the land and reign as a king in Guanzhong himself. Now he forces me to fast and visit the ancestral temple. This is clearly an attempt to strike me down while I am defenseless within the temple walls. I shall feign a severe illness and remain in bed, resolutely refusing to go to the temple. By then, in order for the coronation to proceed as scheduled, Shao Gao will surely come to fetch me in person. The moment he shows his face, we will strike and kill him. Shao Gao sent several groups of messengers one after another to urge Ziying, but Ziying always used the excuse of severe illness, refusing to step foot outside his room. Shao Gao indeed could not contain himself. He personally came to Ziying's residence and questioned him with some irritation. The sacrifice at the ancestral temple is a matter of supreme national importance. How can your majesty fail to go at such a critical moment? Ziying then took decisive action, personally assassinating the powerful official Shao Gao within the solemn fasting palace. He subsequently ordered the extermination of Shao Gao's entire clan across 3 generations, the paternal, maternal, and spousal lines, and displayed their remains in public to announce the downfall of the arch-traitor to the world. After taking the throne, Ziying swiftly dispatched generals to lead a grand army to hold Yao Pass as a final stand. Upon arriving with his forces, the Lord of Pei, Lu Bang, immediately intended to launch a powerful frontal assault on this strategic stronghold. The resourceful Zhang Liang quickly intervened and cautioned Lu Bang, saying, although the Qin dynasty is teetering on the brink, the Qin troops guarding the pass remain formidable in strength. We must absolutely not underestimate them. I suggest first sending a small detachment to plant banners all over the surrounding hilltops as a decoy, creating the illusion of a vast army. Meanwhile, dispatch Li Yiqi and Lu Jia to persuade the Qin generals, enticing them with lavish treasures as bait to surrender. The Qin general, as expected, could not resist the temptation and considered making peace through surrender. Seeing this, Lu Bang was overjoyed and was just about to nod in agreement to his request. Zhang Liang once again keenly cautioned him, saying, this is merely a case of the general wishing to betray Qin privately. I fear the common soldiers below may not necessarily follow his lead. It would be better to launch a fatal strike now, while they are lulled into a false sense of security during these negotiations. Lu Bang adopted the ingenious plan, leading his grand army to skillfully bypass the heavily fortified front of Yao Pass. They scaled the treacherous Mount Kui and appeared suddenly behind the Qin troops to launch a fierce assault, utterly shattering the Qin army in the southern outskirts of Longtian County. The Chu army capitalized on their victory, pursuing the enemy all the way to the city of Longtian. They engaged the remnants of the Qin forces once more to the north of the city. The Qin soldiers completely lost their fighting spirit and suffered a devastating, final defeat. 启朝阳大荒落，晋恶冯敦臧，凡2年。20皇帝下2年，癸巳，公元前208年冬10月，四川监平将兵为沛公于丰，沛公出与战，破之，令雍齿守丰。11月，沛公引兵之薛，四川守壮兵败于薛，走至期，沛公左司马德杀之。周章出关，止屯曹阳。2月余，章邯追败之，复走渑池。10余日，章邯击，大破之。周文自刎，军遂不战。吴叔为荥阳，李由为三川守，守荥阳，叔服能下。楚将军田臧等相与谋曰：周章军已破矣，秦兵旦暮至，我为荥阳城服能下，秦兵至，必大败，不如少移兵守荥阳，西京兵迎秦军。金甲王交不知兵权，不足与济事，恐败。因相与角王令以诛吴叔，献其首于陈王。陈王时使赐田臧楚令尹印，使为上将。田臧乃使诸将李圭等守荥阳，自以精兵西迎秦军于敖仓，与战。田臧死，军破。 章邯进兵击李圭等荥阳下，破之，李圭等死。阳城人邓说将兵居甲，章邯别，将击破之。至壬午，冯将兵居许，章邯击破之。两军皆散，走陈。陈王诛邓说。二世数翘让李斯居3公位，如何令到如此？李斯恐惧，众绝路，不知所出，乃二世议，以书对曰：夫贤主者，必能行都则之术者也。故申子曰：有天下而不自虽，命之曰：以天下为治故者，无他焉，不能都则，而故以其身劳于天下之民。若尧、禹然，故谓之治故也。夫不能修身，寒之名术，行都则之道，专以天下自是也。而徒务苦行劳神，以身训百姓，则是前手之意，非处天下者也，何足贵哉？故明主能行都则之术，以独断于上，则权不在臣下。然后能灭仁义之徒，绝见说之辩，落然行自虽之心，而莫之敢逆。如此，群臣百姓救过不给，何辩之敢图？二是说，于是行都则一言，税民深者为名利，杀人重者为忠臣，行者相伴于道，而死人日乘积于世，秦民易害俱思乱。赵李梁以定常山，还报赵王。赵王复使梁略太原，至时邑，秦兵塞井陉，未能前。秦将诈为二世书以招梁，梁得书未信，还之邯郸，亦请兵。未至，到冯赵。王子出饮，从100余骑，梁望见，以为王，伏谒道旁。王子醉，不知其将，使骑谢李梁。李梁速跪，起，残其从官。从官有一人曰：天下叛秦，能者先立。且赵王速出将军下，今女儿乃不为将军下车，请追杀之。李梁已得秦书，故欲反赵，未决，因此怒，遣人追杀王子，因将其兵袭邯郸。邯郸不知，竟杀赵王，少骚。赵人多为张耳、陈于耳目者，已故2人独得脱。陈人秦家、扶黎人朱基石等起兵，围东海守于谭。陈王闻之，使武平君叛为将军，兼谭下军。秦家不受命，自立为大司马，恶属武平君，告君立曰：武平君年少，不知兵事，勿听。因角以亡命杀武平君叛。21前长史司马欣、董翳左章邯击道。章邯以破武冯，击陈助国防军，杀之。又进击陈西张贺郡。陈王出兼战，张贺死。腊月，陈王之汝阴，还至下城父，其御装甲杀陈王以降。初，陈涉继为王，其故人皆往依之。妻之父亦往焉，陈王以重兵待之，常依不败。妻之父诺曰：护乱见好而傲长者，不能久矣。不辞而去。陈王跪谢，遂不为故。客出入欲以发书，言陈王故情。或说陈王曰：客于无知，专妄言，轻微。陈王斩之。诸故人皆自隐去，由是无亲陈王者。陈王以诸房为中正，胡武为司过，主司群臣。诸将训帝制，令之不是，折系而罪之。以苛察为中，其所不善者，服下吏，折自治之。诸将以其故不亲附，此其所以败也。陈王故捐人将军吕臣为苍头军，起新阳，攻陈，下之，杀庄甲，复以陈为楚。葬陈王于荡，谥曰隐王。初，陈王令智人送刘将兵定南阳，入武关。刘以训南阳，闻陈王死，南阳复为秦，宋刘以军降，二是车裂刘以训。魏州婆将兵略地丰，沛，使人招雍齿。雍齿雅不欲属沛公，即以封降魏。沛公攻之，不克。赵张耳、陈馀收其散兵，得数万人，击李梁。梁败，走归章邯。客有说耳，余曰：两军击吕，而欲复赵，难可独立。立赵后，服以义，可救功。乃求得赵谢。春正月，耳于立歇为赵王，居信都。东阳宁军，秦家闻陈王军败，乃立景居为楚王，引兵之方宇，欲击秦军定陶下，使公孙庆使其，欲与之并立俱进。齐王曰：陈王战败，不知其死生，楚安得不请而立王？公孙庆曰：齐不请楚而立王，楚何故请齐而立王？且楚守势，当令于天下。田丹杀公孙庆。秦左右校复攻陈，下之。吕将军走，剿兵复聚，与番道秦部相遇，攻击秦左右校，破之清波，复以陈为楚。秦部者6人也，姓应氏，作法秦，以刑徒论书离山。 骊山之徒数10万人，不皆与其土长豪杰交通，乃率其草偶王之江中为群盗。番阳令吴瑞甚得江湖艰辛，号曰番君。不往见之，其众以数千人。番君乃以女妻之，使将其兵击擒。楚王景居在留，沛公往从之。张良亦聚少年100余人，欲往从景居，到遇沛公，遂属焉。沛公拜梁为旧降。梁述以太公兵法说沛公，沛公善之，常用其策。梁为他人言，皆不省。梁曰：沛公待天寿，故遂从不去。沛公与梁俱见景居，欲请兵以攻封。时章邯司马师2将兵北定楚地，图相至当。东阳宁军，沛公引兵西，战萧西，不利，还，收兵拒留。2月，攻当，3日，拔之。收当兵得6000人，与故合9000人。3月，攻下邑，拔之。还击封，不下。广陵人赵平为陈王训广陵，未下。闻陈王败走，章邯且至，乃渡江，剿陈王令，拜项梁为楚上柱国，曰：江东已定，即引兵西击秦。梁乃以8000人渡江而西。闻陈婴以下东阳，时欲联合拒西。陈婴者，故东阳令史，居县中，素信谨，称为长者。东阳少年杀其令，相聚得2万人，欲立婴为王。婴母谓婴曰：自我为汝家父，未尝闻汝先世之有贵者。今报得大名，不降，不如有所属。事成，犹得封侯，事败，亦以亡，非世所指名也。婴乃不敢为王，谓其军吏曰：项氏世世姜家，有名于楚，今欲举大事，将非其人不可。我以民族亡秦必。其众从之，乃以兵属梁。婴部既破秦军，引兵而东，闻项梁西渡淮，不与蒲将军借以其兵属焉。项梁众凡6、7万人，军下邳。景居、秦家军彭城东，欲以拒梁。梁谓军吏曰：陈王先守势，战不利，未闻所在。今秦家被陈王而立景居，逆无道，乃进兵击秦家，秦家军败走，追之，至胡陵，家还战。1日，家死，军降，景居走死梁地。梁以并秦家军，军胡陵，将引军而西。章邯军致力，向梁使别将朱姬使与樊军与战。于樊军死，朱姬10军败，亡走胡陵。梁乃引兵入薛，诛朱姬使。沛公从其100余往见梁，梁与沛公卒5000人，武大夫将10人。沛公还，引兵攻封，拔之。雍齿奔魏。项梁使项羽别攻襄城，襄城坚守不下，以拔，皆坑之，还报。梁闻陈王定死，召诸别将会薛季氏，沛公亦往焉。居朝人范增，年70，素。居家好奇计，往说项梁曰：陈胜败，故当。夫秦灭6国，楚罪无罪。自怀王入秦不反，楚人怜之至今。故楚南宫曰：楚虽3户，亡秦必楚。今陈胜守势，不立楚后而自立，其事不长。今军起江东，楚风起之将，皆征服军者，以军事事楚将，未能复立楚之后也。于是项梁然其言，乃求得楚怀王孙欣于民间，为人牧羊。夏6月，立为楚怀王，从民望也。陈婴为上柱国，封武县，与怀王都盱眙。项梁自号为武信君。张良说项梁曰：君以立楚后，而韩诸公子衡阳君成最贤，可立为王，亦数党。项梁使梁求韩城，立为韩王，以梁为司徒，与韩王将1000余人西掠韩地，得数城，秦折复取之，往来为游兵颍川。章邯以破陈王，乃进兵击魏王于临济。魏王使周勃出，请救于楚。齐王丹及楚将相他，皆将兵随勃救魏。章邯夜衔枚击，大破齐，楚军于临济下，杀齐王及周勃。魏王救，谓其民曰降，约定，自烧杀。其弟暴王走楚，楚怀王与魏暴数千人，复训魏地。齐田荣收其兄丹于兵，东走东阿，章邯追为之。齐人闻齐王丹死，乃立故齐王建之弟贾为王，田角为相，角弟坚为将，以拒诸侯。秋7月，大淋雨。武信军引兵攻抗父，闻田荣之急，乃引兵击破章邯军东阿下，章邯走而西。田荣引兵东归齐。武信军独追北，使项羽、沛公别攻城阳，屠之。楚军军濮阳东，复与章邯战，又破之。章邯复阵，守濮阳， 环水。沛公，项羽去，公定陶。8月，田荣击逐齐王甲，甲王走楚，田角王走赵。田间前救赵，因留不敢归。田荣乃立丹子婆为齐王，荣相之，田横为将，平齐地。章邯兵益盛，向梁数10使告齐，赵发兵共击章邯。田荣曰：楚杀田甲，赵杀角，坚，乃出兵。楚、赵不学。田荣怒，终不肯出兵。郎中令赵高士恩专字，以私怨诛杀人众多，恐大臣入朝奏事言之，乃说二世曰：天子之所以贵者，但以闻声，群臣莫得见其面故也。且陛下富于春秋，未必尽通诸事。今作朝廷，前举有不当者，则见短。于大臣，非所以是神明于天下也。陛下不如深拱尽忠，与臣及侍中袭法者待事，是来有以魁之。如此，则大臣不敢奏一事，天下称圣主矣。二世用其计，乃不作朝廷见大臣，常居尽忠。赵高侍中用事，是皆决于赵高。高闻李斯以为言，乃见丞相曰：关东群盗多，今上急，一发纣，至阿房宫，具狗马无用之物。臣欲见，唯未见，此真君后之事。君何不见？李斯曰：故也，吾欲言之久矣。今时上不作朝廷，常居深宫，无所言者，不可传也。欲见，无贤。赵高曰：君诚能见，请为君侯上贤，与君。于是赵高待二世方宴乐，妇女居前，使人告丞相，上方贤，可奏事。丞相至宫门上谒，如此者3。二世怒曰：吾常多闲日，丞相不来，吾方宴司，丞相折来请示。丞相其少我哉？且顾我哉？赵高因曰：夫沙丘之谋，丞相与焉。今陛下以立为帝，而成贵不义，此其亦望列地而亡矣。且陛下不问臣，臣不敢言。丞相长男李由为三川守，楚道陈胜等皆丞相傍县之子，以故楚道公行，过三川城，守不肯击。靠！闻其文书相往来，未得其审，故未敢以闻。且丞相居外，权重于陛下。二世以为然，欲按丞相，恐其不审，乃先使人暗验三川守与道通状。李斯闻之，因上书言赵高之短曰：高善利善害，与陛下无异。西田常向其简功，窃其恩威，下得百姓，上得群臣，足视其简功而取其国，此天下所明之也。今高有邪义之志，违反之行，私家之富，若田氏之于其矣，而又贪欲无厌，求利不止，烈士次主，其欲无穷，结陛下之威信，其志若韩起为韩安乡也。陛下不图，臣恐其必为变也。二世曰：何在？夫高故患人也，然不为安嗣志，不以威义心，节行修善，自始至此，以忠得进，以信守卫，朕实贤之。而君疑之，何也？且朕非属赵君，当谁任在？且赵君为人，精廉强力，下知人情，上能事朕，君其勿矣。二世雅爱信高，恐李斯杀之，乃私告赵高。高曰：丞相所患者独高，高已死，丞相即欲为田常所为。是时盗贼亦多，而关众族，发东击盗者无矣。右丞相冯去疾，左丞相李斯。将军冯杰进谏曰：关东群盗并起，秦发兵追击，所杀亡甚众，然犹不止。盗多，皆以数、曹、转，做事苦，税负大也。请且指阿房宫作者，减省4边数、转。二世曰：凡所为贵，有天下者，得4邑其欲，主重明法，下不敢为非，以治愈海内矣。夫余下之主，贵为天子，亲处穷苦之时，以训百姓，上合于法。且先帝起诸侯，兼天下，天下已定，外攘4邑以安边境，做公事以彰德义，而军官先帝功业有序。今朕即位2年之间，群盗并起，君不能进，又欲罢先帝之所为，是上无以报先帝，次不为朕尽忠力，何以在位？下去疾4竭力，按责他罪。去疾节自杀，独李斯就狱。二世以属赵高治之，则司于子有谋反状，皆收捕宗族宾客。赵高治司绑掠1000余，不胜痛，自无服。司所以不死者，自负其变，有功实无反心，欲上书自陈，幸2事务而赦之。乃从狱中上书曰：臣为丞相治民30余年矣，待秦地之狭隘，不过1000里，兵数10万。臣尽博才，因行谋臣，资之金玉，使游说诸侯，因修甲兵，斥政。 教官斗士，尊功臣，故周拟挟韩、若魏、破燕、赵、夷齐、楚，足兼六国。鲁齐王立秦为天子，又北逐胡、河，南定北越，以见秦之强。更刻画平斗胡、度量、文章布之天下，以树秦之名。此戒臣之罪也，臣当死久矣。上幸尽其能力，乃得至今，愿陛下察之。书上赵高使立弃去不奏，曰：求安得上书。赵高使其客10余倍，诈为御史，业者侍中，更往复训司，司更以其事对，折使人复榜之。后二世使人验司，司以为如前，终不更言。辞服奏当上。二世喜曰：唯赵君即为丞相所卖。及二世所使按三川守游者至，则楚兵以击杀之。使者来，会职责向下吏，高阶妄为反辞以向附会，遂具司5刑，论腰斩咸阳氏。司出狱，与其中子拒之，故谓其中子曰：吾欲与若父牵黄犬，拒出上蔡东门逐狡兔，岂可得乎？遂父子相哭，而夷3族。二世乃以赵高为丞相，事无大小皆决焉。项梁已破章邯于东阿，引兵西北至定陶，再破秦军。项羽、沛公又与秦军战于雍丘，大破之，斩李由。项梁亦轻秦，有骄色。宋义谏曰：战胜而将骄卒惰者，败。今卒少惰矣，秦兵日益，臣为君畏之。项梁弗听。余乃使宋义使于齐，道遇其使者高陵君显，曰：公将见武信君乎？曰：然。曰：臣论武信君，君必败。公徐行即免死，急行则急祸。二世西起兵一章韩击楚军，大破之定陶，项梁死。时连雨，自7月至9月。项羽、沛公攻外黄未下，去攻陈留。闻武信君死，士卒恐，乃与将军吕臣引兵而东。喜怀王自盱夷都彭城，吕臣军彭城东，项羽军彭城西，沛公军大。魏报下魏20余城，楚怀王立豹为魏王。后9月，楚怀王并吕臣、项羽军，自将之，以沛公为当郡长，封武安侯，将当郡兵，封项羽为长安侯，号为鲁公，吕臣为司徒，其父吕清为令尹。章邯以破项梁，以为楚地兵不足忧，乃渡河北击赵，大破之。引兵至邯郸，皆徙其民河内，以起城郭。张耳与赵王歇走入巨鹿城，王离为之。陈于北收常山兵，得数万人，军据路北。章邯军据路南极远。赵数请救于楚。高陵军显在楚，见楚王曰：宋义论武信君之军必败，居数日，军果败。兵未战而先见败征，此可谓之兵矣。王召宋义与季氏而大说之，因之以为上将军。项羽为次将，范增为末将，以救赵。诸别将皆属宋义，号为青子冠军。楚怀王与诸将曰：先入定关中者亡之。当时时，秦兵强，常乘胜逐北，诸将莫力先入关。独项羽愿秦之杀项梁，愤时愿与沛公西入关。怀王诸老将皆曰：项羽为人，剽悍华贼，常攻襄城，襄城无一类，皆坑之，诸所过无不残灭。且楚数进取，前陈亡，项梁皆败，不如更前长者服役而西，告谕秦父兄。秦父兄苦其主久矣，今诚得长者往，无亲报，已可下。项羽不可遣，独沛公素宽大长者，可遣。怀王乃不许项羽，而遣沛公西略地，收陈王、项梁散卒以伐。切，沛公盗荡，至阳城与杠里，攻秦壁，破其2军。二世皇帝下3年甲午，前207年冬10月，齐将田都叛田荣，驻楚救赵。沛公攻破东郡，位于成武。宋义行至安阳，留46日不进。项羽曰：秦为赵急，宜急引兵渡河，出击其外，赵应其内，破秦军必矣。宋义曰：不然，夫伯牛之盟，不可以破击师。今秦攻赵，战胜则兵疲，我乘其弊；不胜，则我引兵鼓行而西，必举秦矣。故不如先斗秦、赵。夫背坚执锐，义不如攻；坐运筹策，攻不如义。因下令军中曰：有猛如虎，狠如羊，贪如狼，强不可食者，皆斩之。乃遣其子宋襄相齐，申宋之至无言，饮酒高会。天寒，大雨，士卒动击。项羽曰：将戮力而攻秦，久留不行。 今岁饥民贫，士卒食半书，均无见粮，乃饮酒高会，不饮兵度。和因赵时，与赵并立攻秦，乃曰：成其弊。夫以秦之强，攻新造之赵，其势必举。赵举秦强，何必之成？且国兵心破，王坐不安席，扫境内而专属于将军，国家安危在此一举。今不恤士卒而徇其私，非社稷之臣也。11月，项羽陈朝将军宋义，及其帐中斩宋义头。楚令军中曰：宋义与其谋反楚，楚王因令即诛之。当时时，诸将皆设伏，莫敢之无，皆曰：首立楚者，将军家也。今将军诛乱，乃项羽公立羽为假上将军。使人追宋义子，及之其杀之。使桓楚报命于怀王，怀王因使羽为上将军。12月，沛公引兵至利，豫刚武侯，夺其军4000余人，并之。与魏将黄辛、吴满军合攻秦军，破之。故其王建孙安下冀北，从项羽救赵。章邯驻甬道属河，降王离。王离兵食多，急攻巨鹿。巨鹿城中食尽，兵少。张耳数使人召前陈馀。陈馀度兵少，不敌秦，不敢前。数月，张耳大怒，怨陈。馀使张衍、陈泽往让陈馀曰：使吾与公为文景交，今王与尔旦暮且死，而公拥兵数万，不肯相救，安在其相为死？苟必信，胡不复秦军俱死，且有11、2相全。陈馀曰：吾度前终不能救赵，屠尽王军。且于所以不惧死，欲为赵王，张军暴秦。今必惧死，如以肉尾饿虎，何以？张衍、陈泽要以惧死，乃食也，则将5000人先尝秦军，至皆没。当时时，其实燕师皆来救赵，张敖亦北收带兵，得10000余人，来皆避于旁，未敢击秦。项羽以杀青子冠军，威震楚国，乃遣当阳军、伯将军将卒2万渡河救巨鹿。战少利，绝章邯甬道，王离军伐食。陈馀复请兵，项羽乃悉引兵渡河，皆审船，破釜，赠烧庐舍，持3日粮，以示士卒必死，无一寒心。于是至则为王离，与秦军遇，久战，大破之。章邯引兵却，诸侯兵乃敢进击秦军，遂杀苏角，虏王离，射箭不降，自烧杀。当时时，楚兵冠诸侯军，救巨鹿者10余臂，莫敢纵兵。及楚击秦，诸侯将皆从壁上观。楚战事无不议，当时呼声动天地，诸侯军无不忍。人坠恐，于是以破秦军。项羽召见诸侯下，诸侯将入辕门，无不西行而前，莫敢仰视。项羽由是使为诸侯上将军，诸侯皆属焉。于是赵王歇及张耳，乃得出巨鹿城谢诸侯。张耳与陈馀相见，则让陈馀以不肯救赵。即问张衍、陈泽所在，疑陈馀杀之，硕以问馀。馀怒曰：不义君之望陈身也，弃陈为重去将印哉？乃脱解印绶，推与张耳。张耳亦恶不受。陈馀岂如厕？客有说张耳曰：臣闻天与不取，反受其咎。今陈将军与君印，君不受，反天不降，即取之。张耳乃配其印，收其麾下。而陈馀还，亦望张耳不让，遂驱出，独与麾下所善数百人之合上泽中于列。赵王歇还信都。春2月，沛公北击昌邑，遇彭越。彭越以骑兵从沛公。越，昌邑人，常于巨野泽中，为群盗。陈胜、项梁之起，则间少年相聚100余人，往从彭越曰：请众为常。越谢曰：臣不愿也。少年强请，乃许，与期旦日出会，后期者斩。旦日出10余人后，后者至日中。于是越谢曰：臣老，诸君强以为长。今期而多后，不可尽诛，诛最后者1人，令校长斩之。皆笑曰：何至于是？请后不敢。于是越引1人斩之，设坛祭，令屠属，屠属皆大惊，莫敢仰视。乃略地，收诸侯散卒，得1000余人，遂助沛公攻昌邑。昌邑未下，沛公引兵西过高阳。高阳人立基，家贫落魄，为里监门。沛公麾下骑士誓食其里中人，食其剑，谓曰：诸侯将过高阳者数10人，吾问其将皆龌龊，好科礼，自用，不能听大度之言。吾闻沛公慢而益人，多大略，此真无所愿从由，莫为我先。若见沛公，谓曰：臣里中有厉声60余，长8尺，人皆谓之狂声。 生自谓我非狂生。其事曰：沛公不好如。诸客冠如官来者，沛公折解其冠，搜逆其中，与人言，常大骂，未可以如生说也。厉声曰：帝言之。其事从容言，如厉声所戒者。沛公至高阳传舍，使人召厉声。厉声至，入夜。沛公方据床时，两女子洗足，而见厉声。厉声入，则长揖不拜，曰：足下欲助秦公诸侯乎？且欲率诸侯破秦也。沛公骂曰：庶如！天下同苦秦久矣，故诸侯相率而攻秦，何谓助秦公诸侯乎？厉声曰：必具图何以兵诸无道秦，不宜具见长者。于是沛公辍喜，起射衣，言厉声上座，谢之。厉声因言六国从横时。沛公喜，赐厉声食，问曰：即将安出？厉声曰：足下起纠合之众，收散乱之兵，不满万人，欲以进入强秦，此所谓探虎口者也。夫陈留，天下之冲，四通五达之交也。今其城中又多激素，臣善其令，请得使之令下足下。即不听，足下引兵攻之，臣为内应。于是遣厉声行，沛公引兵随之，遂下陈留。号厉一击为广野君。厉声言其弟商，时商聚少年得4000人，来属沛公。沛公以为将，将陈留兵以从。厉声常为说客，使诸侯。3月，沛公攻开封，未拔。系与秦将杨雄会战白马，又战趋豫东，大破之。杨雄走之荥阳，2世使使者斩之以训。夏4月，沛公南攻颍川，屠之。引张良，遂略韩地。时召别将司马养方运渡河入关。沛公乃北攻平阴，决河津南，战洛阳东。军不利，南出还原。张良引兵从沛公。沛公令韩王成留守阳宅，与梁俱南。6月，与南阳守以战抽东，破之，略南阳郡。南阳守走保城，守宛。沛公引兵过宛，西。张良见曰：沛公虽欲急入关，秦兵上众，惧险。今不下宛，宛从后击，强秦在前，此危道也。于是沛公乃夜引军从他道还，掩其志，驰名，为宛城3匝。南阳守御自警，共舍人陈辉曰：死未晚也。乃于城见沛公曰：臣闻足下曰，先入咸阳者亡之。今足下留守宛，宛郡县连城数十，其吏民自以为将必死，故皆坚守城城。今足下近日上攻，是死伤者必多。引兵去宛，宛必随足下后。足下前则失咸阳之约，后有强宛之患。唯足下计，莫若约降，封其首，因使职守，引其甲卒与之西。诸城未下者，闻声争开门而待足下，足下通行无所累。沛公曰：善。秋7月，南阳守以降，封为殷侯，封陈辉千户。引兵西，无不下者。至丹水，高武侯塞，襄侯王陵降。桓公胡杨，欲藩军别将梅宣。吕协公西，列皆降。所过王的掳掠，秦民皆喜。王离军继梅，章邯军及援，项羽军张南，相持未战。秦军朔却，2世使人让章邯。章邯恐，使长使心请示。至咸阳，留司马门3日，赵高不见，有不信之心。长使心恐，还走其军，不敢出故道。赵高国使人追之，不及。辛至军报曰：赵高用事于中，下无可为者。今战能胜，高必极度无功；不能胜，不免于死。愿将军熟记之。臣于议仪章邯书曰：白起为秦将，南征燕郢，北坑马服，攻城略地，不可生计，而竟赐死。蒙恬为秦将，北逐戎人，开于中地数千里，竟斩扬州。何者？功多，秦不能进封，因以法诛之。今将军为秦将3岁矣，所亡师以10万数，而诸侯并起子以多。比赵高粟于日久，今事急，亦恐2世诛之，故欲以法诛将军以色责，使人更待将军以脱其祸。夫将军居外久，多内隙，有功亦诛，无功亦诛。且天之亡秦，无与至皆之志。今将军内不能执剑，外为亡国将，孤特独立而欲长存，岂不哀哉？将军何不还兵与诸侯为从，曰共攻秦，分亡其地，南面称孤。此属与身服夫志，弃子为禄乎？章邯狐疑，因使后使成使项羽，欲曰：曰未成。项羽使仆将日夜引兵渡3户， 军张南与秦军战，再破之。项羽吸引兵击秦军于水上，大破之。章邯使人见项羽，谕曰：项羽召军立谋曰：粮少，欲听其曰。军吏皆曰：善。项羽乃与七环水阴虚上，以盟。章邯见项羽而流涕，谓言赵高。项羽乃立章邯为雍王，至楚军中，使长史欣为上将军，将秦军为前行。辖丘申阳下河南，引兵从项羽。初，中丞相赵高欲专秦权，恐群臣不听，乃先设宴，持鹿献与二世曰：马也。二世笑曰：丞相勿邪，谓鹿为马。问左右，左右或默，或言马以阿顺赵高，或言鹿者。高因阴中诛言鹿者以法。后群臣皆谓高，莫敢言其过。高前说言关东道无能为也，即项羽鲁王离等，而章邯等军数败，上书请议助。自关以东，大抵进叛秦立，应诸侯，诸侯贤帅，其众西乡。8月，沛公将数万人攻吴。关屠之。高恐二世怒，诛及其身，乃谢病，不朝见。二世梦白虎啮其左参马，杀之，心不乐，怪问瞻梦。卜曰：荆水为岁。二世乃斋于望夷宫，欲辞荆水，审400马。使使则让高以盗贼事。高惧，乃因与其婿咸阳令阎乐及弟赵成谋曰：上不听谏。今事急，欲归祸于吴。吴欲意志上，更立子婴。子婴人简，百姓皆在其言。乃使郎中令为内应，诈为有大贼，令乐赵立发兵追，劫乐母至高舍。遣乐将立卒1000余人至望夷宫殿门，复谓令仆射曰：贼入此，何不止？卫令曰：周卢涉足甚紧，安得贼敢入宫？乐遂斩卫令，直将立入，行射狼，患者狼，患者大惊，或走，或革。革者折死，死者数十人。郎中令与乐俱入，射上卧作为。二世怒，召左右，左右皆惶扰不斗。旁有患者1人士，不敢去。二世入内，谓曰：公何不早告我，乃至于此？患者曰：臣不敢言，故得全。使臣早言，皆已诛，安得至今？阎乐前及二世，属曰：足下骄自，诛杀无道，天下共叛足下。足下其自为计。二世曰：丞相可得见否？乐曰：不可。二世曰：吾愿得一郡为王。夫许。又曰：愿为万户侯。夫许。曰：愿与妻子为前首，比诸公子。阎乐曰：臣受命于丞相，为天下诛足下。足下虽多言，臣不敢报。挥其兵尽。二世自杀。阎乐归报赵高。赵高乃西召诸大臣、公子，告以诛二世之状，曰：秦故亡国，始皇均天下，故称帝。今6国复自立，秦地亦小，乃以空名为帝，不可。宜为王如故，便。乃立子婴为秦王，以前首葬二世舍南夷春院中。9月，赵高令子婴斋戒，当庙见，受玉玺。斋5日，子婴与其子2人谋曰：丞相高杀二世望夷公，恐群臣诛之，乃佯以义立我。我闻赵高乃与楚曰：灭秦宗室而分王关中。今使我斋见庙，此欲因庙中杀我。我称病不行，丞相必自来，来则杀之。高使人请子婴数倍，子婴不行。高果自往，曰：宗庙重事，王奈何不行？子婴遂刺杀高于斋宫，3族高加以训。遣将兵据瑶关，沛公欲击之。张良曰：秦兵尚强，未可轻，愿先遣人一张。其至于山上为疑兵，使利一击，陆贾往说秦将，但已立。秦将果欲联合，沛公欲许之。张良曰：此独其将欲叛，恐其士卒不从，不如因其懈怠击之。沛公引兵绕瑶关，于溃山，击秦军，大破之蓝田南。遂至蓝田，又战其北，秦兵大败。此为播放列表合集系列视频之一，同款电子书。Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. More videos available in the playlist collections. Matching ebook included. If you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. 谢谢您点赞、订阅、关注，欢迎您的雅正。